We are the sons of Sparda. Within each of us flows his blood, but more importantly, his soul. And now, my soul is saying it wants to stop you. After a tragic death at the hands of his bathroom tile, an MMA fighter finds himself in front of an eldritch god looking for an unwilling schmuck to steal from one of the most dangerous beings in the Marvel universe, the Phoenix. Poor Axel is not doomed, however. He was granted the powers of one of his favorite game characters, Dante Sparda. But the god never specified which version. Few warnings going in. 1. He will start weak and become substantially stronger over the course of a few arcs or so. If that doesn't jive with you, I suppose this is not your story. 2. He makes mistakes, as do all reasonable protagonists. 3. He is not Dante. He is a person with his powers. Don't expect a one-to-one personality mapping. You will be disappointed. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Omni-sensei herewith. What if an MMA fighter was reborn in Marvel as Dante Sparda? Devil May Cry. Part 1. If you enjoy this type of content, please gently slay the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Remember to check out the original story linked in the description. Without further ado, let's get into the legend of the Devil Hunters. My death came at the hand of a slippery bathroom tile. With the life I'd led, I half expected to die fighting an old enemy in an illegal cage match. I even entertained the idea of saving some snot-nosed kid who should have known better than to text while they crossed the street. But nope, it was my liberal use of bubble soap that proved to be my undoing. One wrong step, and here I was. I'm sure there's a joke in there about not being gay, but it seemed death had taken my sense of humor along with my body. The great Axel KO'd by a bathroom tile after a post-fight bubble bath, I groaned. I could already see the headlines. I took comfort in knowing no one was around to point and laugh at me. I'm here, a voice chuckled behind me, and I am laughing my ass off. I flipped around in the endless void I found myself, surprised that I could still manage that much, but even more so by the stature of the being in front of me. He was a giant, 10 stories tall, clad in a shifting purple energy. Who are you? I stammered out in a mix of awe, fear, and confusion. The imposing figure was some scrawny-ass kid in an oversized hoodie. I was hesitant to believe God had a questionable fashion sense. I almost looked around for a cleverly hidden camera crew. This had to be some kind of joke. The figure huffed at me. You're no fashionista either, kid. FYI, the next time you meet someone past the multiversal level, I'd advise you to be careful with your thoughts. They might not be as patient as I am. He leaned in. I am half tempted to shove you into a goat and be done with it. But you're far too valuable for that. I gulped. I had a feeling he wasn't making empty threats. Wait, he said. Next time. Does this mean more people are as powerful as he is out there? My blood curdled. And he'd also said multiverse. Oh my God, the multiversal theory was right. What the hell? Of course it's right. Keep up. A bit presumptuous to assume your little planet is the only thing out there in the wider ether. Existence is as vast as my hunger is deep. I had a million questions, but one presided over all else. What do you want with me? To offer you an opportunity, he grinned, shrinking to my size. We were about eye to eye. You probably put together that I'm in the business of reincarnation, but I don't reincarnate just anyone. I choose the cream of the crop, aka those I can snatch up quick enough before their universe's deity notices. He chuckled. You stole me? I said with a tinge of anger and surprise. What kind of jackass steals a person's soul? Damn it, not again. My entire being tensed, which was stranger than it sounds, seeing as I had nobody. I watched the strange god's movements carefully. There was no way in hell I could take him on, but I wasn't going down without a fight. The god just smirked at me, amusement clear in his eyes. I yanked you from your miserable universe to offer you a new life in another, with superpowers, in exchange for a tiny little favor. I blinked, a bit taken aback. Superpowers? Really? Either this is for real, or I am in the middle of the most lucid acid trip of my life. He raised an amused brow and snapped his fingers. Suddenly, I could feel it again. I stared at my calloused hand in shock while the god's smile grew even wider. Still think this is an acid trip, Axel? I have more power in my pinky than you can comprehend. Hell, I'm so powerful the Omniverse had to shackle me. I can only keep growing if somebody else does it for me. I'm guessing that's where I come in. In exchange for helping me nick a few things from a universe I have my eyes on, I'll give you the powers of the legendary devil hunter, Dante, he teased. Are you for real? My jaw dropped. This had to be a prank. I'd listened so far because I was dead, and realistically, I had no choice, but this was too unreal. But then again, he just brought me back to life by raising his brow and snapping his finger. For now, I chose to look past my skepticism and reservations. To be clear, you're telling me you're going to give me the powers of Dante from Devil May Cry? The one and only. Why? Come on, you know why. You've been playing the games every night for months now. I'm stupid powerful. You're going to die if I don't give you at least something before sending you off. Besides, it's a rite of passage. Every aspirant gets one. My eyes narrowed at the slip-up. Several alarm bells rang in my head, but I pressed on anyway. Where exactly are you sending me? The Marvel Universe. I'm sorry, did you just say Marvel? I knew about the comic universe from my teenage years of pirating movies and bumming comic books off my friends, but wasn't sending me to a make-believe world too. Crazy, he cackled, completing my thought. No more crazy than literally making you a game character. But that's the normie way of looking at things. Fictional worlds are bursting with quirky powers, delectable ingredients, and powerful souls. For us seventh-dimensional beings, good power-ups don't come by easily. Once you can figure out multiversal travel, it's a crime not to try to get ahead by pillaging a few universes, really. You're as good as dead if you stay stagnant after your power reaches galaxy level. The only way to stay alive is to advance, he said. Remember that. So are you in? I licked my lips and contemplated his offer. I was not risk-averse by any means. I became an MMA specialist, for God's sake. It's Shin, the being suddenly said. I'm sorry, what? It's rude to swear using another god's name when you're in the presence of one, he said matter-of-factly. Either you say Shin, or you don't swear at all. You can do the latter if it makes you more comfortable. Thanks. Shin and I met eyes briefly before the god waved me off. Back to your musings then. In summary, I was on the fence about this. Sure, it'd be rad to be alive again, but all of this sounded too good to be true. There was always a rub, and I wasn't saying yes until I knew what it was. Out of curiosity, what do you want me to steal exactly? Oh, nothing much, Shin said casually. Just the soul and space stones. Oh, and a bit of phoenix flame as well, Shin hummed, rubbing his chin. You won't believe how hard it is to find phoenixes beyond the multiversal level. Raising them yourself is out of the question. Are you trying to get me killed? I barked out, a bit surprised, but I was always terrible at hiding my true feelings. You want me to steal 2 gems that control fundamental aspects of reality and rob an outerversal entity. From everything you've told me, that's suicide. Would it help if I told you I won't send you down there with just a template? You'll also have access to a store that lets you buy some of the treasures I've acquired over the millennia. I'm sorry, it's still a hard no, I said. God. Shin knew how many people I'd fight to get both stones. And as if that was not difficult enough, I'd have to take on the phoenix and somehow walk away with some of her fire? I was confident in my skills, but I was not delusional. Where is your sense of adventure, Axel? Shin coaxed. You have a second chance at life? Are you going to pussy out after dying to a tile? It's just another fight. Just another fight. I balked. You're asking me to go up against the source of all life in the multiverse. Her fire can burn reality, and I'm a bloody video game character. The god narrowed his eyes. All I hear is bitching. With a snap of his fingers, my body evaporated. It had been so sudden, I didn't even feel the pain. Once more, my soul was laid bare in front of him. I'd rather you do this willingly, but if you're going to be difficult, then I have very little use for you, he said as an ocean of pressure bared down on me. The white space where we stood slowly lost its luster, allowing me to peer into space between multiverses. Giant clusters of color flashed in vast emptiness, functioning as stars. But between them, I saw beings of inexplicable shapes writhe in the spaces that the light from the multiverses didn't fully touch. One of the closest turned its single eye at me, and I felt its mind approach mine. I froze, even as I mentally screamed my lungs out. Before its mind touched mine, however, Shin restored the white. I fell to the ground, my soul shivering as I tried to shake off the horror of what had just happened. Take my deal or take your chances with them, Shin said plainly. Maybe they won't eat you. Perhaps they'll wear you like a flesh suit for a millennium or two before putting you out of your misery. With gritted teeth, I met Shin's imperious gaze. I'd been foolish to think Shin was a decent guy. He wasn't even human. He was probably as warped as those things I saw outside in the void. I'll fetch your damned stones and the fire, I said with a heavy breath. I'm glad we understand each other. I wish we could have come to an understanding under more reasonable circumstances. But we don't always get what we want. I suppose you ought to be on your way, Shin said. Oh, and one last thing. Remember, I am always watching. The last thing I saw was Shin's lips twist into a smirk as he snapped his fingers. One moment I was in Shin's domain, and the next, I was blinking awake in some stranger's apartment with the sun blaring in my eyes and the smell of piss shriveling up my nose hairs. I looked around to see a sea of people half naked and asleep. It had been one of those nights. The hell, Dante, I groaned, struggling up to my feet. My head was killing me, but slowly the pain faded. And with that clarity came memories. Memories I did not like one bit. I made my way to the second-floor bathroom, stepping over a few passed-out junkies and a girl on her flip phone. Hey, Dante, she said with a bright smile and dark bags under her eyes. She was skinny, in a tank top and baggy jeans. You're up early, with the way you were going at it last night. I thought you'd be out till noon. No rest for the wicked, Tina, I grunted and slipped into the bathroom. I stared at the broken mirror in rage as it confirmed what my memories already told me. Damn Shin. It wasn't bad enough that he was forcing me to fight the embodiment of life itself. I had to do it in a knockoff version of Dante. I wasn't Dante from DMC3 with roguish charm or sick moves, or Dante from Devil May Cry 4 with even cooler weapons and more experience, or the ultra badass that was DMC5 Dante with a Sin Devil trigger. No. I was freaking Dante from DMC, Devil May Cry. The Dante from a failed reboot no one remembers. Gah! I slammed my fist into the mirror, so hard the wall groaned, and the glass misted. I stared at my bloody hand in surprise. It was easy to forget that Dante was powerful, even if he was the store-bought variety from a 2013 game that nobody ever talks about. I felt a sudden strength flow through me, and my bloody fist healed in seconds. As the memory Shin had gifted me tells it, I was a version of DMC Dante, but younger. A rebellious, drinking, smoking loser with anger issues and a propensity for violence. He had unlocked some of his powers, but had the foresight not to go brandishing it. Rebellion, his signature sword, was a mental tug away. However, Ebony and Ivory were missing. They'd been pawned off for some extra cash to fuel his addictions. Virgil was somewhere in this version of the world, but Dante hadn't seen his brother for years. I sighed. Well, all that is over now. Dante is dead, and Axel is no alcoholic. I needed to get out of here and get my affairs in order before I settled down to plan. Dante didn't know much about the Marvel Universe landscape. It was 2003, and there were mutants in this world. No major story beats had happened yet, except for some scuffles between mutant factions and haters, and a major event that happened in the 80s. Magneto had tried taking the White House, and Charles Xavier had been forced to step in. There were fewer of them than they were in the comics. There was about one mutant in every 1 million people, but most of them were based in New York. It was where Xavier's school was. As for the Avengers, Tony Stark was still a playboy billionaire and hadn't donned the Iron Man suit yet. Dante was ignorant about everything else. I would have to do recon myself, I sighed. I suppose I couldn't complain. Dante might have never been alive in the first place. I wonder what strings Shin had to pull to make him appear here. He wasn't messing around when he said he had more power than I could comprehend. One more reason to be wary of the jackass, I sighed. One problem at a time. I could deal with the existential dread after putting Dante's affairs in order. I stepped out of the bathroom to meet Tina, whose sweat-soaked face looked at me with surprise. I heard a noise. Are you okay? Why wouldn't I be? I grunted, still bitter about the bait and switch. Is that blood on your hand? She asked, looking at me with concern. Don't worry about it, Tina, I said, looking past her. I need to go. Do you know who stole my wallet and jacket? Dante's memory went blank after he started partying last night. He'd staggered in here with his shoes, jacket, and a bundle of crisp $100 bills that he'd nicked off some guy trying to jump him. The guy had been oddly well-dressed for a mugger. Anyway, from what I could tell, a bigger haul was waiting for me back at his place, along with ID and clothes. I needed all of that if I was going to skip town and start my new life as Axel. Tina blinked. I didn't see anything. It was pretty late when you wandered in last night. Tina, I said a bit forcefully. Given what I knew about her, I didn't think she was the type to steal from Dante. She was a sweet, mousy girl who ran away from home and sometimes hung out with Dante. She was quick on her feet and rolled with a group of kids that lifted clothes and shoes from transport trucks. Dante looked out for her sometimes. She folded her arms in defiance, but finally sighed. She stepped forward, and I resisted the urge to shrink back. She stunk, I stunk, and with my body's new senses, my nose hairs were practically on fire. Moses patted you down when you were out. Said it was payback for taking his girl. I groaned. That did happen. Moses was a 6'2" bruiser who worked for the local gang that ran the drugs on this side of town. The girl had come onto Dante last week, and Dante, being Dante, had taken her without regard for who her boyfriend was. Bastard hadn't even worn a condom. You better not have any kids running around, you asshole, I muttered. Never mind. You know where Moses went? I asked, and she frowned. Let it go, Dante, she said. You don't want to pick a fight with the Santos gang. Moses might be low level, but his buddies aren't. Come on, I scoffed. Even I'm not that stupid. I was that stupid. The Santos gang might be big and scary, but Moses was just one guy, and I had the power of a half-angel, half-demon badass on my side. I wasn't worried. Besides, it wasn't like I was planning to kill any of them. I would just knock Moses around for a bit, steal my shit back and all of his money, and split town before I got into more trouble. The more distance I put between myself and this place, the better. I needed time to calm down, think, and test the limits of my powers. New York was where everything was at, the mutants, the Avengers, everything. So I'd avoid it for now. Maybe some no-name town where no one would think to look for me. Then, when I was ready, I'd move on. After all, Shin hadn't given me a time limit on the caper. You are thinking about taking them on, aren't you? Tina's words broke me out of my thoughts. What? I'm not, I huffed. Just tell me where he is. I want to apologize, talk things out man to man. She rolled her eyes. When have you ever apologized? A small smile tugged at the edge of my lips. Well, there's a first time for everything, I insisted. You could even come with me if you want. I promise I won't try to kill him. Scout's honor. I made the sign, a playful smile on my face. Tina scrutinized me. No punching either. Of course. She still looked at me suspiciously before she spoke. This way. Los Angeles was a shithole in whichever universe you were in. But this neighborhood was particularly bad. Trash littered the street, the alleys reeked of piss, and weirdos eyed me. Tina led me to a small, rundown diner where Moses and the Santos camped. I had two options. Walk straight in, demand my shit, and hope we don't wreck the restaurant too badly. Or wait until Moses was alone and run his pockets. You could probably guess which way I was leaning. I was about to tell Tina we'd be waiting for the big lug when he saw us. And wow, was he a big guy. I had to remind myself that I had professional training, and my muscles were amped with angel and demon juice when he sauntered up to us in the parking lot. Sup, Tina? Moses nodded, then fixed me with a scowl. You're a dead man walking. You don't just know it yet. I'd have kicked in your teeth if it weren't for Tina's begging. I'd like to see you try, Humpty Dumpty, I snorted. I wanted no trouble, but I wasn't about to roll over for this asshole either. That's it, you're dead, Moses growled, stepping up to me, but Tina came between us. Dante, what did I say about starting a fight? I folded my arms. Far as I'm concerned, I kept my promise. Didn't even have to throw a single punch, and his ass is salty. Come on, Tina protested. I'm done with your shit, Dante. You're out of your damn mind if you think you're walking away from this without a damn lesson in humility. You don't touch a man's girl. That crossed the damn line, Moses fumed. He was right, of course. The Santos were already looking my way. As much as I loathed bending over for this asshole, I swallowed my pride and made Tina happy. Dante would have probably told the asshole to shove it, but I wasn't him. I needed to make like an absent father and split. And starting shit up with a gang was not going to make that any easier. I shouldn't have been with your girl like that. She was feeling down and super vulnerable. And I let my lower head do the thinking for me. Moses's eyes widened, his anger briefly deflating before it flared again. "You think a half-hearted apology will make up for forcing yourself on her?" he shrieked, and the truth hit me like a truck. "That bitch." I looked at Tina, who looked equal parts horrified and surprised. "Now, wait a minute." She came on to me. "I didn't do shit." God, even my excuse sounded made up. Like I haven't heard that before. "I've about had enough of your shit." Moses finally shoved Tina out of the way and slugged me. Or at least he tried to. I weaved under the swipe like second nature and planted 2 lightning-fast jabs into his kidney and face. He reeled back in pain as I stared at my hands in shock. I couldn't tell if that was muscle memory from my old or new body, but I was freaking fast. Moses growled, shaking off the hits, and rushed in to grapple me. But I stepped to the side and weaved too quickly for him to react. 3 more jabs followed, 2 to his kidney and 1 to the back of his head. He grunted and swung around, but I dodged again and laid into him faster this time, chaining punch after punch until my strength reached a crescendo and lashed out with an uppercut. It broke the hasty guard he'd raised to protect himself and dug into his sternum. It raised the heavy man off his feet briefly before he crumbled to the floor broken. "Oh my God, Dante," Tina shrieked. "Stay out of this." I snapped. "I'm only going to say this once, Moses. You don't want to mess with me," I said. "Where's my shit?" His words came out a garbled mess, and I kicked him over, turning him on his back. "Unless you want to go round 2, start talking." "I don't have it," Moses gasped. "The guys took your keys when they saw the wad of cash. The boss sent some people over. They're probably emptying your place right now." Freaking shit. I kicked Moses hard, not even bothering to rein in my strength. I heard a crack and a whimper, but I was beyond caring. "Damn you and your lying bitch girlfriend." I turned around to find Tina staring at me, shocked. "What was that, Dante? You told me you could care for yourself, but I didn't." "That was something else." "Yeah," I muttered. I suppose I was a bit light on the details. In the corner of my eyes, I saw the Santos stirring. It won't be long before shit started getting out of hand, and I needed to get to my apartment. I grabbed Tina by the shoulder. "Thanks a million. I mean it. I really owe you one. But now I need to go before things spiral further out of control. Also, you should probably run. I don't want the Santos messing with you." I liked Tina, but I wasn't sure I'd put myself in the crossfire and risk the police coming after my ass because she got caught. "You're leaving town?" Tina asked. It was more of a statement than a question. "Yep. Have no idea where I'm going, but it's certainly not here. Will I ever see you again?" "With any luck, no." Dante's apartment was on the 3rd floor of one of the few nice buildings on that side of town. It was a wonder he kept the place despite not having a job. When he rented out the apartment, I remembered him filling in private investigator as his occupation. Since the cash always came in on time, the landlord ignored all of his eccentricities. His job as private investigator wasn't total bullshit, to be fair. When he was sober, he was the guy you call when you had a demon problem or needed somebody bad to disappear. Most clients didn't ask what happened to the body, so Dante never told. I shrugged. At least the quality of his work spoke for itself, even though he was mouthing off every second sentence. I saw the Santos cars parked in front of his apartment, so I knew there was going to be a fight. Halfway up to Dante's room, I considered summoning rebellion. Dante had killed with it before, and since his signature pistols were not an option, a stylish long sword was a close enough substitute. But won't that just escalate things? Committing multiple homicides was not my ideal way of kicking off my second life. That was bound to draw the attention of the police and other dangerous factions. My problem solved itself when I arrived on the 3rd floor. I found a bat sitting to the side and picked it up. I gave it a few practice swings before inspiration struck me, and I tried out a few different swings, flipped it over, and caught it like I'd used one for years. I found myself grinning despite everything. Okay, maybe emo Dante wasn't so bad after all. Rounding the corner up to my apartment, I saw 2 lookouts, checking for people as I heard the Santos go through Dante's place, breaking shit and tearing up the place. Those bastards. The bat resting on my shoulder creaked from the pressure of my grip. I stepped out into the corridor, hiding the bat behind me as I stalked towards them. They didn't notice my approach until it was too late. "Hey, it's Dante." The first guard shoved the second and pulled his gun, but I swung out, batting his wrist before he got off a shot. The gun went flying. I rammed the butt off the bat into the midsection of the second panicking guard as he stepped away, desperate to draw his gun. Gauging the distance between both men, I swung out in a vicious diagonal arc, knobbing both men on their heads. They were out cold before they realized I'd even attacked. I whistled in appreciation of Dante's skill, my skill. "The hell is going on out there?" A husky voice yelled. I recognized it. It was Lorenzo, the Santos boss. "Take a wild guess." "Dante? I thought you were out cold in that cracked den by the diner." "Shit. Saves me the trouble of finding you. I heard about your recent windfall. Some congratulations are in order. That said, I want the rest of it. Where's the money you got off that agent?" "Agent?" I muttered in surprise. "You didn't know. He had a freaking government badge and everything. Didn't you even bother patting the guy's body down before you robbed and killed him?" "Shit," I cursed. Reviewing Dante's memories, I did notice the guy who tried to jump him was particularly skilled. Dante had to summon rebellion and use the flat side to punt him guy across the alleyway to make him stop. He'd hit his head hard and never gotten up. Dante simply looted the guy like a good video game character would. He'd not seen the badge or had been too drunk to recognize it. Dante killed a government agent. I was in even hotter water than I realized. The way I see it, Lorenzo started before he suddenly yanked the door open and shoved a gun in my face. 3 other mooks stood beside him, their hands resting on their weapons. "You've put our entire operation at risk, bringing down whatever shield is down on our ass. If we frame you nice and clean, they can pick you up at whatever police station is closest and save themselves the trouble of snooping around. With what you got here, that shouldn't be too hard," he grinned. "Shieldy." I stood there, frozen for a second, my mind frantically connecting the dots. Dante had been making a name for himself as a demon hunter lately. It only stood to reason that someone was bound to come looking eventually. But attacking him out of the blue, alone? Either S.H.I.E.L.D. had mighty confidence in this dude, or he was a Hydra double agent, which was even worse. "I just got here," I mentally screamed. Either way, Lorenzo could go to hell. I swerved to the left while I grabbed his hand and wrenched the gun from it. He yelped, and I jabbed him in the throat with the pointy end of my bat. He crumbled to the floor, gasping for air. The 3 men raised their guns, but mine pointed at their wriggling boss faster. "Ah, fellas, you don't want to do that," I said. "Kill him, and you'll never make it out of LA alive," the largest man said. "Move, and I'll beat the ever-living shit out of you all after I'm done with your boss," I seethed. "I don't want to have to kill him, but I will if I have to. Gents, you don't want to test me after the day I just freaking had. I just want my shit and to be done with this town. When the cops come knocking, tell them I went to New York." They all shared a look, but none of them seemed to be backing down. So I pulled off the safety and pressed the gun against Lorenzo's head. "Well," I demanded. The big man gritted his teeth, but eventually lowered his gun. Lorenzo, in his infinite wisdom, chose that exact moment to find his voice again and ordered. "Light up this fool," he wheezed, and like automatons, the idiots raised their guns again. My gun went off, and Lorenzo's head exploded. The eyes of the thugs grew a little bit wider, and the world froze. A red and black display invaded my sight, and my eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. "You got to be freaking kidding me." Flashing before my eyes was a game message. "Congratulations on claiming your first soul. You've earned 2 red orbs. Red orb, a soul of a low-rank human or demon of little renown and power. Can be used to improve your physical parameters, unlock weapons, and shop at Shin's Dimensional Emporium, eventually." Shin shoved a game into my head. More information came spilling onto my screen after the line about the red orb. "You claimed your first human soul and triggered the DMC system. Think status to review your parameters, skills, and abilities." I stared at the floating screen, confused, half wondering if this was all an elaborate prank. But the world was still frozen, so what the hell? "Status," I said, and a second screen spilled out. "Name, Axel Warren species, Nephilim class, HP, 400 health points P, 350 stamina point E, 200 angelic energy DE, 200 demonic energy strength, 20 dexterity, 20 vitality, 40 endurance, 35 angelic energy, 20 demonic energy, 20 ability skills, empty devil arms shop locked." This is certainly different from any DMC game I've played. I waited for more information about each attribute, but nothing came up, so I moved on to the next section. Abilities, racial, angel regeneration. Bounce back from grievous wounds by invoking divine energy to remake your body. Demon Hunter Weapon Mastery. Gain unnatural mastery of every weapon you use. Basic mastery is unlocked after the first use. Adept, Master, and Grandmaster skill mastery are unlocked 4 times as fast. Devil Trigger. Locked, tap into your demonic heritage and unleash your inner power. 500% health regeneration, 3x speed, and 3x strength. I whistled. Shin was not kidding around. It had everything I'd expected it to have and more. I hadn't expected the class function. If every RPG I'd ever played was any indication, that meant that I could level up and gain stats. But I needed a class first. However, the ability that caught my attention the most was Angelic Regeneration. It explained how I was able to rapidly heal my wounded fist earlier. Demon Hunter Weapon Mastery was why I could use the baseball bat like I'd been fighting with it my entire life. Speaking of weapons, I opened the Devil's Arms tabs and reviewed it. Rebellion, Bonded, Grade 1, First Evolution, 0/500 Red Orbs, Arbiter, locked. Unlock for 100 Red Orbs Osiris, locked. Unlock for 250 Red Orbs Aquila, locked. Unlock for 500 Red Orbs Eryx, locked. Unlock for 500 Red Orbs Ophion, locked. Unlock for 200 Red Orbs Ebony and Ivory, lost. Looks about right. I worked my neck. With everything laid out before me, the goal of stealing multiple Infinity Stones and a fragment of the Phoenix seemed less suicidal. I'd have to kill a shit ton of people and hunt down every bad guy I could get my hands on if I ever wanted to harvest enough red orbs to go toe-to-toe with Thanos or any of the more dangerous elements in the Marvel Universe. Maybe hunting the Chitauri would get me there quicker. After all, Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy did call them paper people. Aside from them, there were dozens of other faceless bad guy armies I could take on. Before it comes to that, though, I'd have to exhaust the bad guy population of Earth. All without becoming infamous for being a terrorist or serial killer. Either way, I'd be killing a lot, and these fools standing before me would be the first of many. The last line of my status still remained a mystery, and I had a feeling it would be that way for months to come. Perhaps Shin wanted to give me some new power-up or something else from the series. I was genuinely curious, but I had enough on my plate. Congratulations. You've unlocked Blunt Weapon Mastery. Basic congratulations. You've unlocked Gun Mastery. Basic My Demon Hunter Weapon Mastery skill was already working. The world resumed the moment I decided I was ready, and I threw my bat at the largest of the 3, knocking him clean out, while I pulled up Lorenzo's dead body to shield me. They opened fire before I could get him up, sending bolts of pain up my arms and chest. Once he was up, I backed into the hallway, tossed him to the side, and peeped in, taking shots at the 2 men left standing. A lanky guy advanced, unloading into the wall, and was a few steps away from the doorway. It made it all too easy to shoot him in the chest. As he crumbled to the floor, I fired 2 shots into his body to make sure he wasn't getting up again, and then I scanned the room for the last guy. He'd slipped into the bedroom to hide. You've earned 2 red orbs. I shunted the message to the back of my mind while I focused on the last guy. I made no sound as I stepped into the apartment and stood in the middle of the room for a moment, listening. His rough breathing carried through the walls, alerting me to his location, and I fired multiple shots. I heard his body crumple, but I fired 2 more bullets through the drywall just to be sure. When I did not receive a notification, I knew he survived somehow. With my gun in front of me, I entered the room. When his eyes met mine, he cracked a crazy smile. Something rolled to the floor, and I recognized it a second too late. It was a mother-damn grenade. I dove backward, but not far away enough. The shockwave carried me, throwing me out of my apartment window onto the roof of the second house. My skin was on fire, my muscles screamed, and it felt like I'd broken more than a few things. Damn my life. I wheezed. There went all of my shit. I had no clothes or money, and I was sure all of Los Angeles just heard the explosion. The night just kept getting better and better. On the bright side, I got away free and clear. A second later, I felt 8 more souls enter my body. The night was not a total loss. I focused on channeling angel regeneration. There was nothing but pain for the longest moment until there was a sudden release. Energy bathed my aching and battered body, and the mark on my back lit up, shining through my threadbare shirt. In seconds, I was completely healed, left to face the fallout of what had happened. As soon as I could walk, my first order of business was clothes. I snuck into the apartment in the building below me. It was dangerous in broad daylight, but I lucked out. Whoever lived here had a teenager in the house. So I borrowed a shirt, pants, shoes, a hat to hide my bleach-white hair, and a jacket to complete the ensemble. I was leaving a trail any competent detective could follow, and the cameras around the building already marked me as a person of interest. But I didn't panic. As soon as the police arrived at the apartment, the agents were sure to follow. But before that happened, I wanted to be ready, so I returned to the diner. Moses was in the parking lot talking to his girl when I walked up to him. His face was swollen, and he was holding his side. The big guy jumped like he'd seen a ghost when he laid eyes on me, which made me grin. "What are you doing, Moses?" "It's him," the girl shrieked. She was a dirty blonde with fake knockers and a pretty face. She had a rotten attitude and was entitled as hell. Honestly, I felt dirty just remembering the fact that my body had gotten with her at some point. "Piss off, Barbie," I said. "Moses and I need to have a one-on-one." Her mouth fell open. "You can't talk to me like that." She turned to Moses. "You're just gonna let him talk to me like that?" Moses swallowed hard. "You heard the man. We have business to discuss. I'll catch up with you later, promise." She twisted her mouth and looked between me and Moses before she folded her arms and huffed. "You better. I have no idea what you see in her," I said as I watched her storm away. "Probably the same thing you did," Moses said, and I smiled even more. "Haven't lost your sense of humor, eh? Good. You'll need it for what I'm about to say next." Moses took a moment to steady himself. "Your boss is dead," I said, "and I'm going to help you steal all his money." "No," Moses froze, disbelief clear on his face. "Ah, come on. Don't tell me you don't want to be rich," I teased. "I think you have to if you hope to keep a girl like Cammy." Moses stared at me like I was insane. "It wasn't particularly hard either. I just pointed a gun and pulled the trigger," I said, leaning on Moses's car. He took several steps back, but I grabbed him in an affectionate headlock before he had the chance. "Since you were not a total asshole, I thought I'd reward you by sparing your life and give you one chance only to leave the Santos organization before I systematically cut my way through them." He put up a strong face, but I could tell he was afraid. "Your boss is bound to have a stash house. Tell me where it is, and I'll give you half of what I find. You can skip town, blow the cash, or swim in it for all I care. Cooperate with me, and you'll be rich, and I'll be out of your life." I took one step closer, driving Moses up against his car. "If you can't give me what I want, I'll have to find someone else who will." Moses gulped. "Do we have an agreement?" There wasn't some grand reason why I was robbing the Santos. I was on a tight clock, and it was only a matter of time before S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Hydra found me. The faster I could skip town, the faster I could disappear and hopefully find a new identity. If I was lucky, I could swing by the pawn shop and get ebony and ivory back before I left. I bit my lip, nervously thumbing the hammer on the gun I'd taken from Moses before I tied him up in his car. If you couldn't tell, I was never going to give him the money, but I couldn't bring myself to kill him either. He was an asshole and part of the reason why I was in this mess, but he didn't deserve to die for it. The gun was decent, but it was no ebony or ivory. It felt wrong doing this without them, but I couldn't wait around until two of the biggest intelligence agencies in the world caught up to me. It was dark out, and I was in the alley across from a restaurant. As Moses tells it, the stash house was in the basement, and it was a Sunday night, a day out from Transpo Day. I paced, trying something I remembered from the game, the evade. Angel evade and demon evade. Both were equally effective and could pull me away from harm in the nick of time appropriately. When done right, Angel Dash propelled you an extra distance, while Demon Dash empowered your attack by 2x upon successfully dodging an attack at the very last moment. I assumed a boxer stance, dodging and weaving through imaginary body shots, uppercuts, and hooks. I moved quicker than ever, tumbling forward, but I never managed to get a burst of angelic energy out of me. It was the energy I was most familiar with, as it had healed me before. By the time the shop restaurant emptied, I was covered in a mild layer of sweat with no progress. But I rolled with it and moved up to the restaurant with a ski mask covering my face and my heart at my throat. I approached the back door, ready to kick it in, when I realized it might be open. It was late at night, and people were probably using the service entrance. I nearly burst out into a laugh when it was. I slinked into the restaurant, past the staff clearing up in the kitchen, and thumbed several knives from uncleared tables. I hid when I saw a busboy swinging back to get empty dishes, and I continued on my way until I came to a staircase where I saw 2 armed men standing guard. They had their pistols holstered and gabbed on like a bunch of gossips. I pulled up my mask as I approached them. "Fellas," I called. "Fancy seeing you here. I didn't know you liked Chinese food too. Though I'm not sure the owner would appreciate you packing heat in here." Both men snapped to me, hands on their guns. "Who the hell are you?" I frowned, feigning offense. "It's me, Dante. I live a couple of blocks down. I heard this place was good, and I've seen you guys around. We've even talked a few times. You don't remember me?" Both men exchanged looks. "Get the hell out of here, kid," the first man said. "This is your first and last warning. Don't make me come up there and kick you out," the second guy growled, tapping his gun. I raised both hands in mock surrender and turned around, but then spun around and looked at the other guy who threatened to kick me out. "You really don't remember me, dude? We partied together that one night." The guy grumbled something about stupid kids as he climbed up the stairs, and then grabbed me by the shoulder. Big mistake. I grabbed his wrist, twisted it, and held one of the 2 steak knives I'd pocketed from the restaurant to his throat. "Ah!" he screamed. The other guy's eyes went wide, and he reached for his gun, but I flicked my finger and let the knife fly. It got him in the shoulder, and he yelped, alerting the restaurant and probably everyone in the stash house. Shit, I was aiming for his throat. The second knife hit the intended target, and I watched him gurgle to death, a bit horrified by what he'd done. It hadn't dawned upon me until this very moment that I was a killer now, and while my body was practically built for it, my mind wasn't quite yet. A sharp dig into my side brought me out of my poorly timed crisis of conscience. The second guard was trying to run, but I held on to him with barely any effort and pressed my gun against his temple. "You've earned 2 red orbs. Congratulations. You've unlocked Knife Mastery Basic. You don't want to piss me off, my dude," I warned. "I'm on a very short fuse, and I won't hesitate to rough you up should you tempt me." I shoved him down the stairs, holding on to him until we came to the door. It swung open a second later to 2 guards armed with AKs. I dropped the guy on the left with a gunshot before the guy on the right opened fire on my designated bodyguard. The bullet ripped through him, killing him immediately, but I surprisingly had the upper body strength to keep him upright and bull rush into the room, tossing the dead guy on AK guy. He yelped in anger, trying to shove the dead guy off him, but my knife went into his eye socket before he even got him up. "You've earned 6 red orbs." I grabbed an AK and immediately rolled to the side, avoiding a spray of bullets. With my heart pumping, I hid behind a crate to the side. I'd caught a few men entering the room at the edge of my vision. I tucked the handgun into my pants and worked the AK like I'd used it for years, checking the ammo, chamber, and safety. While I listened for approaching footsteps, a stray thought occurred to me. I'd make a great mercenary. That was one way to rack up the soul count I needed. I listened and counted 3 pairs of feet lurking in the back. When they were close enough, I raised my hand, without looking, and fired in a fan, pelting away at the men. I heard a scream, and others opened fire. I huddled into a tiny ball as hell descended, shredding the majority of my cover. More than once, a bullet hit me, but I was still holding on, cursing my foolishness. Why the hell did I think this was a good idea? They had AKs, for God's sake. I slipped on my mask as the bullets stopped, and lay in wait for them. This time, I wasn't so eager. I moved when I felt somebody poke me with their AK. I grabbed the muzzle, brushing it to the side as I fired 2 shots into his body. The second guy opened fire as I pulled the first man close, using his body as a shield. I repeated the same maneuver of shoving him at the last gunman, but he was smart enough to move out of the way. By the time he set his sights on me again, I'd fled deeper into the room, hobbling while I activated Angel Regeneration. My wounds mended while I moved, and in a few moments, I was as good as new. That was when I heard the last guy pick up his phone. "You've earned 4 red orbs. 140/200. Hey Marco, we have a situation," the guy said, with more than a little trepidation in his voice. "It wasn't our fault. The guy is a freak." "Got it. I'll be expecting your team. We need to clear out before the cops show up." The call cut. "Damn me," I muttered. The plan had been to make as little noise as possible. At best, I had a few minutes to wrap this shit up before I had to fight the cops and the Santos. Again, I asked myself, why did I think this was a good idea? "Hear that?" the guy called out. "Reinforcement is on its way. You won't make it out of here." Better give up now and die like a man, than die running and hiding like the rat you are. Did you really think you could steal from us? He called out, and I peeked past the corner, just as he swept by. His gaze turned back, but by then, I had already put a bullet in him. A shot caught me in the shoulder a moment later, and I grunted in pain. Walking up to the padlocked cupboard at the back of the room, I pointed my gun at it and shot it off with some irritation. Grabbing a duffel bag to the side, I emptied the cupboard into it before I rushed out of the safe room, bringing a fully loaded AK with me. They must have had close to $500,000 in there. You've earned 2 red orbs. How the Santos got their hands on that much cheddar was beyond me, but it was mine now. I stopped moving at the top of the stairs and listened for movement. When I heard none, I sprinted out. I came eye to eye with a fat Chinese man with a shotgun at the back door. He pulled the trigger as soon as he saw me, and I dropped to my knees, sliding under most of the spread. Grunting as I came up, I perforated his gut with my AK and made my way out of the restaurant. You've earned 2 red orbs. Ahead of me, I saw a Buick skid to a halt at the front entrance of the club, for dudes spilling out. I hid behind the garbage before anyone saw me. Sweat poured from my face as I activated angelic regeneration again, forcing the bullets out of my gut and bringing me to full health. I swear to God I'll club every Hollywood movie director in the head the next time I come to LA. Dodging bullets was harder than it looked. I huffed. I couldn't stick here for long. I couldn't swing around out back, nor could I cross the street without drawing attention to myself. So I went with the next idea that came to mind, looking up at the building across the alley. Dante had decent parkour skills in all of the DMC games. Well, DMC Dante had platforming. Potato potato. It'd have to do. I tossed the bag of cash on the roof of the opposite building and took deep breaths to pump myself up before sprinting towards the walls and running up it. Surprisingly, my fingers reached the ledge on the first try, and I heaved myself up without much effort. Congratulations. You've learned parkour. Basic. It'd be so awkward if I couldn't make it up the building. I would have pulled out my hair if I couldn't reach the money after going through all of that effort. Off to the pawn shop then, but first I needed a change of clothes. Sirens approached, and I immediately dropped on my belly, watching the cop cars park and dozens of cops spill out, pinning the Santos in. In the blink of an eye, a firefight started after a portly Santos dude broke down negotiations with an opening shot. No way in hell I'm going back to jail. I couldn't agree more with the sentiment. I slinked away from the madness, keeping my figure low, clutching my bag of cash as my life depended on it. I stuck to alleyways and paths I was sure had no cameras, slowly making my way towards the pawn shop with my babies, Ebony and Ivory. A few blocks out from the shop, I ran into a few homeless dudes hanging around a fire. The farthest from the fire freaked out when I tapped him on the shoulder. He had a shaggy beard and a shifty look in his eyes. I pulled out a crisp $50 bill. Give me your jacket and shirt, and it's yours. The man eyed me up and down and stepped back. Is that blood? Do you want the money or not? I asked, and the guy pursed his lips while giving me an apprehensive look. It's my only pair. I can't exactly trade it away for just $50. $100 will be enough to get you a replacement and keep you fed, I said rather hastily. The longer I stayed put, the easier it'd be to track me. I needed to run a few more errands before I was ready to disappear. $200, the dude declared, folding his arms. Winter is coming soon. I can't afford to cheap out on a good jacket. I gave him a flat look. We're in California. We don't have winters. The man blinked and rubbed the back of his head bashfully. I'm still sticking to what I said. I shook my head. I could have haggled for a better price, but I had a boatload of money now. It honestly wasn't worth it. All right, hand it over, I said, pulling more cash from my jeans pocket that had separated before approaching the man. Wait, really? He said, startled. Then, I'm thinking I'll charge $500. I've got to think about. I grabbed his shoulder and squeezed hard. You don't want to keep wasting my time. Are you interested, or should I keep walking? My grip tightened on his shoulder with every passing second, and he quickly nodded. Excellent, I smiled. Now take it off. He did as he was told and promptly got paid. All the while I removed my bloodied jacket and shirt, changed it for the new one, and wrapped up the discarded mess. I would have liked to switch out my blood-stained jeans as well, but I had to draw the line somewhere. The man shivered in the night air and looked at me pleadingly. Can I have your old jacket? No, I said as I tossed the bloodied jacket into the fire at the center of the gathering. I couldn't risk anyone getting a hold of my blood. This was the Marvel Universe. Any number of crazy things could happen. I didn't want to fight an army of Dantes in the not-so-far future. "What are you doing?" A homeless Asian dude yelled at me. "More fuel for your fire," I simply said and left the alley. Calling Crowell's place a pawn shop was an insult to the man who ran it. It didn't just deal with trinkets and jewelry, but had one-of-a-kind gems, artifacts, and weapons he collected and sold to his exclusive clientele. Dante's pistols had caught Crowell's eyes when he completed a job for him, killing the host of a minor demon. I hoped Crowell hadn't sold them yet. I was in no mood for a wild goose chase. Crowell was a gaunt, ancient man with slicked white hair and wrinkle lines that made him come across as severe. He was at the front desk when I stepped in, polishing a set of ancient throwing knives. I felt a strange energy wafting off them, and when I tried to identify them using my system, it came back with a unique description, earning me a new skill. Fingers of Orochi 5 of 10 demonic kunai laced with poison that burns the body and mind. Favored torturing tools of Awari, a 17th century hand general. Congratulations. You've unlocked Devil's Eye. Basic. Allows you to peer into the existence of all that you can see. The quality of information provided is determined by the level of skill. I whistled internally. That quite the set you got there. Crowell raised a brow. You recognize the blades? There was no mistaking the suspicion and respect in his eyes. I might know a thing or two about exotic weapons. Odd. Crowell's intense green eyes landed on me. I did not peg you for the discerning sort, but I supposed it makes sense with your pistols. They're one of the finest pieces I've ever handled. Does that mean you still got them? I asked. I've missed my babies. I'm ready to take them off your hands now. I patted my bag of cash. Crowell took me in for a long moment, looking at my bloodied pants and sneakers and my sweaty and tangled white hair. I could practically hear the gears in his head turning. I'm sorry, but you can't afford them. I raised a brow, trying to twist my arm. Crowell? I can't say I didn't see that coming. Name your price. This shit was starting to get old, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I just wanted to get out of there as fast as I could. Hand me that bag, and I might consider letting you walk out of here a free man, Mr. Dante, Crowell said with a dark glint in his eyes. Ebony and ivory don't belong in the hand of a common thief. My blood boiled. Who was he to tell me where my guns belonged? And I thought Crowell was one of the good ones. Pot calling the kettle black, Crowell. I narrowed my eyes. I'm trying to be reasonable here. Don't force me to be uncivil. My finger is on the silent alarm. Move even an inch, and every police in Los Angeles will in minutes. You'll be lucky if you see inside of a jail cell. Jesus Christ, today is not just my day, is it? I sighed as I considered my options. Killing Crowell would only draw more attention. It was a surefire way to put myself on the radar of every major underworld organization. The man was polishing a knife for the hand, for Christ's sake. Wait a minute. My face bled all emotion. You drive a hard bargain, Crowell, I said. I certainly respect the hustle, but I'll be sure to bring up your name when my sensei asks who kept me. Crowell frowned. Sensei? Of course, don't tell me you don't know. I spoke. When I saw the fangs of Orochi, I just assumed. His eyes went wide. Why you're with the hand? Were you expecting black fatigues and a katana strapped to my back? I raised a brow. You can't, I thought. Crowell's face cycled through a dozen emotions. It was the most expressive I'd ever seen him. I smirked internally. So I'll ask again. How much do I owe you for my guns? I asked, leaning into the counter. Crowell's wild eyes finally settled back onto me. He bowed deeply. If I had known, please accept the guns as a gift. A token of respect. I nearly broke out in a wild laugh. It was strange seeing him so unbalanced. I couldn't give him time to think, however. I folded my arms. Time is of the essence, Mr. Crowell. No one can know I was ever here. Say less. The man nodded and disappeared into the back room, reappearing with an exquisite mahogany chest he must have commissioned. He must have planned on selling my guns to some fat cat. Too bad I came back. Still, it was surprising that he was willing to let the guns go so easily. I reached to open the case, but Crowell spoke up before I could, presenting a second box. Before you leave, I was wondering if I could trouble you with a favor. His slender fingers eased open the box, revealing the remaining 5 kunai belonging to the fingers of Orochi set I'd seen earlier. The blades were black as night, yet they glistened with unnatural light like obsidian. Fingers of Orochi 10 of 10 demonic kunai laced with poison that burns the body and mind. favored torturing tools of Awari, a 17th century hand general. Restored and enhanced by Crowell Dougal, master craftsman. Would you mind delivering these to your master for me? Crowell said, seeing as you're going to be reporting to him once this mission is done. I saw the trap coming from a mile away. Crowell was calling my bluff. I'm leaving town, actually, I said. Sensei has assigned me an important task outside the city. By yourself, he asked. Yeah. I narrowed my eyes. I see, but surely you could call for another disciple. Master Meacham has been eager to get his hands on these. I'm afraid you'll have to deliver them yourself, I said, and Crowell fixed me with an expectant look that slowly turned confident as the seconds passed. Damn me. He knows. 2 of the 5 kunai fanned out, stabbing deep into my shoulder and chest, and I screamed as pain consumed my spirit and body. I felt a headache coming on. -50 HP. You've been inflicted by the Black Dragon's breath. Reduces clarity of the mind and makes you more susceptible to questioning. I reached for the case containing ebony and ivory, despite the pain, but Crowell's hand lashed out, beating mine back. I pulled a pistol and aimed it at the spindly man's head before he had the chance to mess me up even more. But it was then I tracked his second hand and noticed he was holding something under his desk. My first guess was an alarm, but then I thought about the people Crowell dealt with. What have you got under there? A shotgun. 12-gauge sewn-off shotgun, actually. I keep it in case somebody is actually stupid enough to try and rob me, Crowell said. It doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while, riff-raff like you stumble into my store, thinking they're hot shit. Ouch, I said as I pulled the dagger stuck in my left shoulder and the other piece stuck in my chest. What gave me away? There is no Master Meacham. That'll do it. But what if you'd been wrong? You could have just pissed off an important member of the hand. Any true member would have not overlooked such a blatant mistake. Crowell snorted, somehow managing to look down on me despite being several inches shorter. You're no assassin. Although, I'm intrigued as to how you possess the knowledge that you do. No doubt the hand shares my curiosity. I'll be sure to tell them everything when they arrive. Try to alert the hand, and I'll scream till my lungs turn blue. It doesn't matter if you shoot. I'll bring this place more attention than you've seen in years. Something tells me you don't want the police looking into this quaint store of yours too closely. What makes you think I've not already called them? Crowell's squinty eyes narrowed. Puffed. There's no way you have a panic button specifically programmed to alert the hand. And if you did, I'd be worried about you. The hand has a nasty habit of using people and tossing them to the side. Crowell frowned slightly before he slowly let go of the knife he'd been clutching. Take your guns and go. I raised an eyebrow. Just like that. Isn't that what you wanted? You're not worth the trouble. Huh. I did not believe Crowell was really going to let me go for a single second. But I couldn't very well tell him to shoot me. I took a precautionary step forward, and his face gave him away. He looked like he was fighting back a smirk, and I dove to the left just as the shotgun went off, shattering the glass behind me and announcing my presence to the whole neighborhood. I fired my gun, placing 2 shots into Crowell's chest before he had the chance to recover. I came up a second later, stunned that I'd been that easy to take him down. You've earned 2 red orbs. A scream from outside yanked me back into the moment, though. A woman ran for her life, while another dude rapidly dialed 911. Welp, there went by anonymity. I got moving. First, I fetched ebony and ivory, which earned me a new notification. You've reclaimed ebony and ivory. Upgrade the weapon to improve the damage per bullet. All skills associated with each devil arm can either be learned or bought from the store. You've killed an enemy of significance. Claim their weapons. Fingers of Orochi. Why the hell not? I gave the mental go-ahead and received a new notification. You've unlocked a subskill of devil arms. Weapon vault, huh? With a mental command, I made the poison daggers disappear, as did ebony and ivory. The AK in the bloody bag, the pistol, and the last knife I still had on me disappeared as well. The new and previously lost weapons appeared under my devil arms skills. Rebellion unlocked. Upgrade to first stage for 500 red orbs Arbiter locked. Unlock for 100 red orbs Osiris locked. Unlock for 350 red orbs Aquila locked. Unlock for 500 red orbs Eryx locked. Unlock for 500 red orbs Ophion locked. Unlock for 200 red orbs Ebony and Ivory weapon vault. The shotgun went into my weapon summon subskill as well. Crossing the threshold, I dipped into the back of Crowell's store and headed for the rear exit. I walked up to an old car at the end of the street that was abandoned and bashed the window in with my jacket covering my fist. It took me some time to hotwire the oldest car I found, seeing as it had been quite some time since I had done that. I made my way towards the highway and punched it. Congratulations. You've unlocked automobile mastery. Basic in the distance, I heard police sirens and chatter. My heart was in my throat the entire time I drove. My foot finally came off the gas when I was miles away from the city, with my fuel gauge halfway to E and my stomach rumbling. I took a moment to breathe and assess my situation. I was probably a wanted man in LA now. I could never go back there unless I planned on taking on the Hand, the Santos, and the police and put myself on the radar of two of the most dangerous ghost agencies operating in this world. At least I was loaded, I thought, tapping the bag of cash beside me. Some of Crowell's blood had gotten on the bag when I shot him. I probably needed to switch it out when I got the chance. The same went for my bloody clothes. I spiked Angel Regeneration to heal the last of the damage from the last wounds and got another surprise. You've pushed your skill and body to the limit. You've gained +1 endurance, +1 vitality, +1 dexterity, +1 angelic energy. At least something good did come out of the night. It was great news that I could earn stat points by pushing my body to the limit. Speaking of which, I checked my status. Name, Axel Warren Dante Sparda. Species, Nephilim class. None HP. 400 SP. 320/350 AE. 150/210 DE. 200 strength. 20 dexterity. 21 vitality. 41 endurance. 36 angelic energy. 21 demonic energy. 20 red orbs. 30 ability skills. Devil Arms Shop. I was less psyched about the paltry amount of red orbs the entire endeavor netted me. 2 orbs per kill was a really stingy conversion. With Rebellion's first upgrade at 500 points, it would take me a while to grind up to that steep sum. With the heat on me, I couldn't get started on that. Not until I knew what the hell I was doing combat-wise. Angel Regeneration carried me through both of my fights. I lost count of how many gunshot wounds I took at some point. I needed training, tons of room to experiment, and of course, a new identity before I could even think about gathering souls. But first, I needed to get somewhere safe. I wrapped up my bloody shirt and shoved it and my money bag into my trunk. Next, I cleaned the car of the broken shards of glass, then zipped up my hoodie before I drove into town and stopped by a shady motel with a few girls posted in front. A sultry brunette strutted up to me. She was in a tight miniskirt, a skimpy tank top that left nothing to the imagination, and a leather jacket that must have done nothing to stave off the cold. "Like what you see, honey," she said, leaning into my window. "Hop in." I smiled, and she climbed into the passenger's seat. I was assaulted with her cheap perfume as I sped off towards my next destination. "So," she started. "Where to?" "The convenience store," I said. I noted the confused look on her face. "If you need a condom or something." "Oh, I won't be needing that, not tonight." "Then why?" "What's your name?" "Rhea," she said as she leaned into me, pressing her supple breast against my arm. "Men must ask you to do a lot of weird things in your line of work," I said. "How would you like to do something ordinary for a change?" Rhea looked at me, a bit wary. "What did you have in mind?" I handed her a shopping list and enjoyed the look of confusion emerging on her face. "You want me to shop for you?" I sent Rhea into a convenience store with a small wad of cash and a long list. I'd chosen this one because the parking lot had no security cameras. I asked for bleach, a bag of clothes in my size, basic toiletries, a few colors of hair dye, several baseball caps, and a baseball bat for good measure. She came back with 2 heavy bags and a confused look on her face. "At the very least, you could have helped, you know," she huffed as she settled down in the passenger's seat, huffing. "And you could not have pocketed the extra change from your little shopping trip," I said as I rummaged through the bags. She put up an affronted look. "You're not some serial killer or criminal, are you?" "Nah, just a garden variety weirdo," I said as I slipped her $1,000. "For your trouble and silence." With that, I sent Rhea on her way. I switched out my clothes in the car and transferred all of my clean money and clothes into the rucksack I had her buy for me. I left the car on the outskirts of town after wiping it down for my prints and blood and burning my old clothes and bag. It took me half an hour to leg it back into town, and I rented a motel room in a rundown part of town to dye my hair. I changed the motels twice again, sticking to the seedier parts with little surveillance, and settled on a motel with a room across from the freeway. On a hunch, I cut the wire of the camera that monitored that section of the motel and broke into a room across from my assigned room, one floor above. If someone managed to track me down, I'll be ready. And it was a good thing that I did, because at 2 a.m. it happened. I saw several shadowy figures burst into the room I had rented and turned it upside down. My face was ash white, with ebony clutched tightly in my hand, as men in dark fatigues searched 2 other rooms before they gave up. By the time morning came, I was a nervous wreck. I'd bet my left nut that whoever came for me last night had several people hanging around town, just in case I turned up. Secret organizations didn't have a habit of giving up easily, not after I murdered their agent. I could kill whoever was left behind, but it'd be smarter to give them the slip and run far, far away. So that's what I did. Around noon, I left my room with my rucksack filled with cash and hurried down one of the many seedy alleys. It was blissfully empty, which made repeating my former stunt a breeze. I ran up the building wall, grabbed the ledge, and pulled myself over just before 2 men in suits came running down. While they searched for me, I dropped down the second street with changed clothes and took a taxi to the nearest bus stop. I got a ticket for the next town over and did not stop traveling until I was far out of the state. Nick Fury's POV. What do you mean he gave you the slip? I barked at the dumbass agent who'd had the balls to deliver bad news over a video call. The bastard is a low-level wannabe mercenary who got the jump on an agent on leave. He shouldn't be that hard to track down. He's nothing like his file described, sir, the agent said in a panicked voice. After leaving Los Angeles, he moved like he knew we'd be coming after him. Even the people who knew him swear he's different. And apparently, the changes started when he woke up that morning. So, your excuse is he woke up different. I scoffed and watched the agent squirm and got to thinking. Before yesterday, the kid would have been perfect for the Avenger initiative. Intelligence gathered told us his primary weapon is a sword he can summon. He also has a superhuman physiology and decent marksmanship skills. If only he hadn't done something monumentally stupid like murdering an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and running. There was no coming back from that, not without extreme concessions. What do you want me to do, sir? Send me a report of everything he did. Leave nothing out. Fury ordered and ended the call. I'll put Natasha on it. After evading the G-Men's shield or Hydra sent after me, I took things nice and slow. I traded buses until I found myself in Sin City. A valid ID was the last thing I needed to disappear, and the best forger Dante knew was in Vegas. So here I was. The city was a lot different than I remembered. Granted, I didn't remember much of 2003. In my timeline, I spent much of the year training and getting into underground amateur fights to rapidly gain experience and gather the money I needed to compete at the highest level. I haven't been in an underground fight since 2008, but with the body I had now, I knew I could clean house if I wanted to. I sighed. It was a shame I had to keep a low profile. I could do with a good workout. I suppose that would have to wait until I got a private gym. I'd stolen about $657,631 from the stash house minus expenses. I counted. It was enough to tide me over for years if I was frugal, and I planned to invest most of it in companies I knew were going to pop off. But that was only the beginning. If I managed to keep my head for long enough, I planned to hit up other stash houses and start a few businesses to launder and clean my money. All this was to position me exactly where I needed to be when shit started going down. I made my way to a payphone and rang Donnie's number, but only got the answering machine. Strange. It was the middle of the afternoon, and Donnie knew the type of people who called this number. He always picked up. Something was wrong. Knowing I could be headed for some serious shit, I stole a car and drove far into the desert. From there, I walked a few miles north before I chose an inconspicuous rock under which to store my money. It was mid-afternoon when I made it to Donnie's spot with $30K in my jacket. It was about the amount I reckoned the full identity package would cost me. Donnie had a small grocery shop as a front, and it had been trashed when I walked in. A slow hum filled the room. The freezer was open, and half of the content was splayed and leaking on the ground. The entire aisle had been shredded through, and large sections of the drywall were missing. I summoned Ebony and Ivory. Whoever did this was not ordinary. I took quiet steps deeper into the shop, then heard a gargle and froze. Come on, man, Donnie pleaded. I swear I'll get you your money. I need a little more time. No more time, a voice hissed. and then there was a crash. God's damn it. Why do I have such rotten luck? You better be breathing, or you're going to wish you weren't, I yelled as I barged into the room, guns first. I froze when I saw what I was up against. It was a guy with sickly green skin with an inhumanly long tongue, draped in a suit of all things. And he wasn't the only person in the room. He had brought half a dozen guys with him, all strapped with guns and dressed similarly. What's with the tongue? He hissed at me. Who are you? Dante. Donnie practically wept. Why's your hair black? Donnie was a tattooed, scrawny man with horn-rimmed glasses and greasy black hair. He'd grown a small beard since the last time I saw him. You know him? One of the men asked. He was tall, bald, and looked like he was hella trigger-happy. He's an asshole I some time to business with, I quickly said while eyeing the lineup carefully. I could probably take all of them, but not without sustaining a few bullet wounds and nearly being split in two from a tongue lashing of all things. I needed the ID, but I was not ready to get in the middle of whatever this was. Sorry, Donnie. Come on, Dante. We're practically brothers, Donnie insisted. That rat bastard. I'll shoot you myself if you try and pull that shit, Donnie. Fix your own damn life. I've enough on my plate as is. I slowly took both of my fingers off the triggers of my guns. Gents, I'll let you get back to whatever it is you were doing. Not so fast, Greenskin hissed. You stay. I'd rather not, I said, setting my jaw. I wasn't a suggestion. His long tongue licked his lips ravenously, and I puked a little in my mouth. You've seen us, and you know him. $100,000. That is how much he owes. Pay it, and you can continue with whatever business you came here for. Looking around once more, I sighed. Freaking hell. How the hell did he rack up that kind of debt? I shot Donnie a look, and he let out a nervous laugh. I might have gotten a bit too excited about the fighting pits. You run fights in Vegas? I said to Greenskin, a bit impressed. The money is good, and it helps us find people with unique talents, he said. I wonder if you have a unique talent yourself. Your guns, they're not ordinary. Oh, Dante is. I shut Donnie up with a hard look before he got me into even deeper shit. How about I pay a quarter of what he owes? It's about what I would have owed him for what I needed done in the first place. I was a little slow on the uptake, but it was obvious now. Greenskin was a mutant, and the fighting ring was probably some scheme to recruit promising mutants into their organization. It was surreal seeing one so up close. If the SHIELD raid had me on the fence about the whole transmigration into Marvel thing, Greenskin tipped me right over. He suspected I was one of him, and Donnie's big mouth might have just given me away. Greenskin had a calculating look in his eyes. I am Toad, he said, and I have a deal for you, Dante. Fight one match, and I forgive your friend's debt if you win. And if I lose? Toad smirked. I am confident you won't. I considered my options. Getting on the mutant radar was not something I was particularly interested in. If he was connected to Magneto, Sinister, or any other big hitters in the mutant world, I'd be schmucked. Whatever happened to staying underground and quietly building my strength? Fine, I said begrudgingly. But if I am going to be putting my life on the line, I might as well get my money's worth. I need Donnie's services. We can talk about the fight when I'm done. And how can I be certain you won't try to run? Greenskin narrowed his eyes. Leave your bodyguards behind, I shrugged. Between all 6 of them, I'm sure they will manage somehow. Toad laughed and nodded to the buff, bald guy. He and the rest of his boys surrounded me. Take his guns and escort him to the club at 9 p.m. 9 p.m.? That's not nearly as much time as I need to. For once in your life, shut up, Donnie. I look forward to seeing you fight, Toad said and left out the back door. As soon as he left, the buff dude walked up to me with his palms outstretched, an eager look on his face. It was as if he was begging me to resist so that he'd have some excuse to brutalize me. Not that he could, but I wasn't going to rise to the bait. I offered up ebony and ivory without much fuss, and he inspected them each for a long time. What is trash like you doing with guns these exquisite? He demanded. I shrugged. Right place, right time. They're mine now, he said, sliding them into 2 pistol holsters by his side. I thought it odd that he had a holster waiting and ready to go. He saw my lingering stare. Is that going to be a problem? No gun is worth dying over, I answered nonchalantly, letting the guns go for now. I could have refused him and fought back, but Donnie needed to work, and I could always get my shit back. Then I turned to Donnie and helped him to his feet. Oh, thank God, Dante. I thought I was a goner. Oh, I wouldn't start celebrating if I was you. I want a passport, driver's license, credit, the whole works. And it better be the best work of your goddamn life. If I am going to be putting my bacon on the line for you, you're not cutting any corners. Okay. He raised his hand in surrender. You got it. I've been saving an identity for a premium client. But I suppose you deserve it for saving my bacon. He strolled into the back, and I followed after him into a reinforced back room where he had multiple monitors set up, a full-picture studio, a printing press, and a few other machines I did not quite recognize. The soldiers strolled in after us, scanning the room. Donnie hopped onto his computer and started typing away. I deserve a whole lot more than your best. You're going to pay me back the difference. Oh, come on, Dante. The old you wouldn't have minded bashing a few skulls in. Well, the new me understands the value of anonymity and money. Keep it down, both of you, Baldy barked. If he can talk, then he's clearly not working hard enough. I want us out of here before nightfall. Old Dante or Axel would have found the mouthy guard offensive, but I had bigger priorities. I allowed Donnie to toil in silence and waited for my time. He paused to take my photo and took brief breaks to update me. You're Peter Jason Quill now. My eyes went a bit wide. Freaking Star-Lord. Hey, don't look at me like that. I don't get to choose the name. I just make do with what I've got. The identity is perfect. Disappeared a while back, should be in his 20s, kind of around the same age as you. I've been nurturing it since I discovered it way back in the 90s. He's got a high school diploma, credit cards, and everything. Donnie grinned. That's a lot of dedication, Donnie, I said, not quite believing the freaking coincidence. With my luck, the asshole would probably show up at some point and lay into me for stealing his name. Donnie grinned. Why, thank you. It feels great to be appreciated. How much longer now? Not long. Donnie folded his arm, leaning back into his ergonomic chair. Everything is about ready for print. Awesome. Step to it, double time, I said with a wide grin, earning a disgruntled look from Baldy. He sauntered over, cracking his oversized knuckles. Didn't I tell you to? The kick to the nuts caught him entirely by surprise. The 5 other mooks moved, but it was already too late. 2 Orochi blades flickered out, nailing the 2 closest suckers to me in the forearm and chest, turning them to wriggling messes while my other hand materialized a pistol. I dropped 2 guys before the third one wizened up and dodged, ducking behind an old printer in the far corner of the room. The 2 others, still reeling from the dagger throws, were barely on their feet. Dragon's breath. That's some nasty stuff. I pulled the trigger twice, ending the paralyzed pair. Another bullet went into the skull of Baldy, who was trying to claw his way up to his feet. That left the last guy. Come out, wherever you are, I said as I slowly circled to cut him off. Beside me, Donnie had gone white and scampered under his desk when the first gun went off. I grabbed a stapler idly by his desk and chucked it beside the printer. The last shooter swung up, shooting like I predicted he would. Before he could realize that he'd been played, I fired 2 shots into his chest. This killing thing is not half bad when you know what you're doing. I smiled in satisfaction as I stole back my guns for the second time that week. I also got back the fingers of Orochi. I got to put a leash on you or something. I also stole Baldy's Desert Eagle, which I hated to admit had better damage than both ebony and ivory at the moment. But my babies had room for growth. While I was looting, I also came across 2 grenades and a flashbang. They were a not-so-subtle reality check that reminded me all it took was 1 competent fighter, and I'd be done for. Not one to waste money. I stole the $5,000 they were carrying between them. Whistling, I idly thought that the Fight Club must pay very well. The entire exchange also earned me 12 more red orbs, bringing my count up to 42. A few more bouts of mass murder, and I could buy my second weapon. I was split between Ophion and Arbiter. The latter was a metal-as-hell axe that detonated with demon energy each time you swung it. Given my luck since I'd arrived in this world, it'd be nice to have that kind of middle-finger power in my back pocket. Ophion was more of a traversal and a strategic battlefield weapon, useful in all sorts of situations. I could imagine the look on a mook's face when I suddenly yanked his body in for an uppercut. Honestly, I was leaning either way. My attention swept back to Donnie, and I noticed he was shaking. He flinched when I made eye contact. Please don't kill me, Donnie begged immediately. He might be a coward, but at least he was smart. Just get me what I want, and you'll be fine. He looked conflicted. How can I be sure that you won't? Lead you into a trap that forced you to murder 6 people in cold blood, and make your life far more complicated, by drawing the attention of the very people you've made it a point to avoid, I said with a steely stare. Don't test me, Donnie. Do as you're told. Besides, you're far more valuable to me alive. I really didn't mean to. He started but stopped, then sighed and went back to work. Thankfully, he didn't push me by trying to draw things out. I had a driver's license, social security number, passport, and credit information. Satisfied, I smiled before tucking away the new papers into my jacket pocket. I made to leave, with a fidgeting Donnie behind me, before I suddenly swung around. One last thing. What can you tell me about those fighting pits Green Face was talking about? Donnie rapidly blinked before he started answering. All right, they pit superpowered people, mercenaries, martial artists, and just about everyone they can find against each other, and stream it live. People make bets on it, and you can probably figure out the rest. Huh, I rubbed my chin in thought. Who are the fan favorites right now? You still want to fight? Donnie asked. Maybe. It pays to know your options. What about me? Donnie gulped. What are my options? I raised a brow. He certainly got balls. Tell me what I need to know or die, I shrugged. Simple as that. Dante, I know you're pissed, but the bullet caught him in the middle of the eye. All it had taken was a flick of my wrist. The gun appeared, and in a split second, it was gone. Donnie had outlived his usefulness, and he dragged me into his bullshit without regard for how it would have affected me. Besides, he also had a loose tongue. It was only a matter of time before he told someone else Dante Sparda was in Vegas. As for the underground fight, I already determined it was not worth the risk. At least not until I was much stronger. I fetched some alcohol from the store proper and doused the interior with it. I got free and clear with a new ID and tried to store them in my weapon vault. It took a minute of finagling, but tying it to the shotgun I stole from Crowell had seemed to do it. Given what I'd done to get the damn things, I couldn't risk some asshole or pickpocket stealing it. I also took Donnie's hard drive because, well, it was sitting there. God knew what sort of goodies I could find if I handed it over to a proper hacker. By nighttime, I was on my way out of town in a stolen car, head bopping to a song as I replayed the events of the day in my head again. Donnie's death didn't weigh on me as I feared it would. His gambling habit nearly cost me everything. This wasn't a damn story. I wasn't going to fold and put my ass on the line just because someone asked nicely. Now that I was free and clear, I just needed to pick a town in the boonies with a lot of trees where I could set up and... Is that a guy standing in the middle of the road? A sharp jolt woke me as my back bloomed with pain. Everything hurt. I was on highway asphalt, and my blurry vision caught the car I'd stolen flipped on its head and burning in the distance. Thank God. I had enough sense not to bring my entire stash of money. Losing 30 grand like that still stung. But at least I was alive. As I struggled to my feet, I noticed half of my face and most of my left side had been scraped raw by the asphalt. I triggered angel regeneration. What the hell? I groaned. How did I crash? You didn't, a voice said from behind me. Ebony appeared in my hand and swiveled in the direction of the voice, but he was gone before I even looked at him. Behind you, the voice said, and I swiveled, facing a teenager in tight-fitting athletic wear, a pair of goggles hanging off his neck, and a wild head of white hair billowing. Healing plus weapon summoning, he mused with a thick European accent. I can't say I dig the build because mine is better, but it's respectable. My eyes went wide with recognition. Pietro Maximoff, aka Quicksilver. You ran me off the damn road. I growled, summoning Ivory as well. Give me one reason why I shouldn't pump you full of lead. Quicksilver laughed. You're too slow. I could run you back to Vegas before you can even blink. Shit, I knew he was right, but I didn't want to give him the satisfaction. Talking to him reminded me of Shin. He was yet another self-assured, arrogant prick who had me at his mercy. I'd cowered and bowed my head once, and I was going to have to do it again or deal with the consequences. Red rage surged in my veins. People used to freaking tremble at the mention of my name. Now I was just another tiny fish in a big, big pond. With a steadying breath, I made my guns vanish. If I couldn't punch my way out of this, maybe I could talk instead. Pietro's eyes seemed to glitter like a school child's when I made my guns disappear. I bet that never gets old. What do you want? Simple, Pietro said with a smirk. You. Wait, true to his word, I found myself in a room with the very mutant I was skipping town to avoid, spilling forward at the sudden nausea. I was tempted to use angel regeneration again, but a cursory look at my energy bar made me hesitate. I was going to need every ounce of angelic energy to survive the upcoming fight. HP, 290/400 SP, 320/350 AE, 80/210, 200/200. One mutant runaway as promised, Pietro said. His abilities? Toad asked. Weapon summoning and enhanced regeneration, he said. Raven will be thrilled. Just make sure he comes out of the fight in one piece. Yeah. You're the one who ran him off the road. Toad hissed, then glared at me. He can heal. He will live, although he doesn't deserve to after what he did to my men. Cry me a freaking river, I growled as I slowly stood upright. I knew I should have kept my mouth shut, but it was the way they spoke about me as if I wasn't even there. It pissed me off. You pass on Donnie's debt because you are a bully trying to recruit me into your supergroup of freaks. What did you think was going to happen? Toad's tongue lashed out, and I skillfully ducked under it while equipping Ebony. I fired 2 shots into his chest before his tongue swept downwards, cracking like an oversized whip. Shuffling to the side, I avoided the attack before firing again. Before I could reposition myself to continue my assault, I was suddenly in the air, hands windmilling, but I still landed on my feet. A slimy tongue snapped around my throat and jerked me up in the air, slowly choking the life out of me. I gasped, clawing at my collapsing airway, but the bastard didn't let up. Quicksilver stood beside him, worry slowly creeping onto his features. Okay, that's enough. But Toad ignored him, so I took matters into my own hands. I summoned the Desert Eagle and let a rip. I heard the gun boom and saw a white flash, but nothing happened. Quicksilver was standing in front of the Toad, hands stretched out. Slowly, he opened it and let a smoking bullet dribble to the floor, much to my utter terror. I was about to summon the flashbang when Toad whipped his tongue and sent me out of a glass window behind me. I fell about 20 feet before I righted myself and landed on my feet. I swallowed huge gulps of air and tried to get my breathing under control. Around me, I heard a sudden roar of a cheering crowd. 10 huge fog lights came on next, banishing the darkness around me, and it became obvious I was in some sort of metal octagon with blood-stained floors and all manner of weapons hanging on the far wall. I immediately summoned Ebony and Ivory and waited on my opponent with bated breath. Speaking of the devil, he emerged from the shadow cast by the fog light. He was a strapping young man with dark cat ears of all things, and a tail swishing behind him. He wore a black leotard and had bandages wrapped around his hands and bare feet. I knew an experienced fighter when I saw one and laughed at the irony. I'd been itching to test my mettle, and now I got my wish, though it was under the most inconvenient circumstances. He's quicker than a cheetah and more ferocious than a lion. I give you Night Cat, a familiar voice boomed on the loudspeaker. It was Toad's. The crowd cheered and hooted, their excitement deafening. And his challenger is a dead man walking, able to heal from any wound and summon weapons of mass destruction. I give you Arsenal. The boos were overwhelming, and I let them roll over me. I was used to the hate with my MMA background. I had to claw my way to the very top. I'd done it in my past life, and I could do it again here in Marvel. You're going to die, the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. He cracked his neck. I'd say it's nothing personal, but it won't make much of a difference, would it? No, it would not, I said, firing Ebony and Ivory simultaneously. Each bullet took half of an energy point from their respective pools, so I could manage it for a bit before I had to stop. Unsurprisingly, Night Cat seemed to dodge them all, zipping closer and closer all the while. When he came close enough to swipe at me, I disappeared my gun and juked under the strike, coming in with a kidney shot that took the cat by surprise. But it didn't rattle him enough, nor did it slow down the sudden twist of his torso and the subsequent claw strike that shaved a strip off my forearm. Quick footwork allowed me to gain some distance while I assumed a relaxed stance, with my shoulder low and my legs wide. Congratulations. You've recalled kickboxing. Adept, you're quick, Night Cat said as he licked the blood running down his claws. And you talk too much. He moved again, but this time I was ready for him. I dodged a flurry of hand swipes and raised my leg to dodge a particular bold leg sweep. But I didn't go for a kick to the leg like he'd be expecting. With a shit-eating grin, I pulled out my desert pistol and fired at him. Night Cat, with his bullshit flexibility and a sudden burst of speed, took the shot in his forearm instead of his head, but I pressed the opening anyways. I guess an instant headshot would be asking for too much. Still, It did prove a theory I'd been formulating. He wasn't faster than a speeding bullet. He was just faster than me and could generally predict how I would respond and move. He probably has some perception-based mutation to round off his claws, flexibility, and obvious strength. He hissed at me like an actual cat after I shot him, and he lunged at me, but I beat him back with my new baseball bat. The thing snapped under the intense force, and Nightcat went flying. The crowd gasped, and I could feel the momentum swinging. I fired one more shot at my desert eagle to finish off the feline bastard, but he zipped up to his feet and dashed to the side faster than I could react. I kept firing until he disappeared into the darkness beyond the fog lights. In an unbelievable turn of events, Arsenal sent Nightcat running. This is the first time in a long time we've seen somebody wound the feline hunter. What will he do next? Will he give up to Greenhorn and forfeit the match and his winnings? Or will he strike like cornered beast? The weapons came flying so fast that I barely reacted. First, it was a sword, which I narrowly dodged. Then it was a knife that stole a bit of my trapped muscle, and finally came a spear, which I had to summon Rebellion to parry. I sent it flying off into the distance, and an overwhelming sense of confidence and excitement filled me. It was in my hands, the Rebellion, and its metal grip felt cool and familiar to the touch. Immediately, I knew how to use it. Congratulations, you've recalled swordsmanship. Adept a dozen more weapons followed, each admittedly poorly parried, but parried nonetheless. What is this? I heard the anger sip into Toad's voice. Arsenal has pulled out a sword of all things, and he seems to know a thing or two about using it. Will this be enough to defeat Nightcat? I seriously doubt it. As if on cue, Nightcat came bounding from my flank at incredible speeds, but there was no fear in my eyes. I moved, executing a feint, and parried the slash that followed. I pushed him away with my long blade, turning and twisting it for a quick horizontal cut, which Cat evaded easily by flipping back. I closed the distance, pressing him with strikes, trying my best not to telegraph my attacks, and slowly, my form became less wild, and I shifted to his left side where his bleeding forearm lay limp. By the 10th swing, I had him backpedaling and surprised him with a particularly nasty kick to the gut that folded him. I riddled him with bullets even as he went down, yet he miraculously managed to dodge more than a few, but Ebony and Ivory never needed reloading, and I was far from spent. I didn't stop until I had more than 5 bullets in him, and he was writhing on the floor in pain. Cat tried to get up, but I put a demonic bullet into his thigh with Ebony. Got nothing to say now. I roared, the volume of my voice surprising even me. It's been dealing with one cluster mess after another. Shield, now Toad, and now a freaking duel. Honestly, I wanted nothing more than to put a bullet in this bastard and call it a day, but I had a much bigger problem on my hand. Toad had said we were broadcasting live, and that meant the cat was out of the bag. I needed to get gone fast, and Nightcat was my ticket out of here. Please don't, the feline mutant finally begged. It's nothing personal, I sneered, throwing his words back at him as I pressed the gun to his skull. The dread seeped into his face in slow motion, and he shut his eyes, waiting for death. Don't, I heard Toad announce from the speaker. Or you'll what? It was obvious Cat was his top earner, and he was a remarkable mutant too. For all his speed and skill, he didn't fare too well against bullets and someone who had better reach than him. Simple logic, really. Here's what's going to happen, I said, yanking up Cat on his legs even as he groaned. You're going to let me out of here, or your precious mutant over here gets a bullet in the head. Why do you think I'll ever make that trade? Toad asked. Don't bother playing dumb, I snapped. You already showed your hand. I know this is some front to recruit mutants into your asshat organization, and I know Nightcat over here is, at the very least, a prospect or a member. You were counting on him winning, and he was never supposed to kill me. So what will it be? Will you lose one mutant at a chance to capture the other? Or will you let him live for a chance to catch me at another date? How about neither? I heard a voice speak into my mind, and my entire body froze. The voice sounded grandfatherly and old yet oddly familiar. Professor X? You know of me? The voice asked. Shit. Across from the arena, I saw 2 people strolling in. One was a rather voluptuous woman with blue eyes and flowing white hair. The other was a stout, muscly man with thick black sideburns sticking out of the sides of his mask. They were dressed in odd leather uniforms of yellow and black. I forced my mind to not make the obvious connection and focused instead on the rage within me that had been building. I couldn't let him see what I knew. It would put an end to my plans before they even began. With a roar, I called upon the demonic energy flowing in my veins, releasing a wave of crimson, fiery energy that slammed into Professor X's consciousness. Oddly, the wave was mostly contained within my body, and it was enough to send the pervy professor packing. What are you at? The effort took as much out of me as the entire angel regeneration sessions. Minus 100D, congratulations. You've unlocked demonic energy manipulation. I swayed slightly on my feet, and my grip on Night Cat's throat loosened. The mutant plopped to the ground and promptly passed out. Much to my surprise, the wounds he'd incurred during our fight had started clotting. That was some bullshit. His healing factor was better than mine. I'd remain battered and bruised if I didn't activate angel regeneration. All at once, Storm and Wolverine took a stance, the latter unsheathing its claws. What did you do to the professor? Wolverine demanded. I should be the one asking the questions. Who the hell are you? And why the hell is your professor trying to mind assault me? I snapped back. I raised my sword to match Wolverine, knowing I stood no chance. By some miracle, even if I could take him. Storm was another matter entirely. Her mutant power was atmosphere control. It didn't get more overpowered than that. Didn't anyone ever tell him it's rude to go looking in people's heads? In the commentator stand above, I heard an explosion and saw two powerful beams of red light arc out. I heard a familiar yelp. It was Toad's. Pietro let out a string of curses, and then a sudden blur nearly knocked me off my feet. I used Rebellion to support me, and when I finally got my bearings, Night Cat was also gone. Welp, there went my leverage. Unless the morals of the X-Men were radically different in this universe, a wounded mutant would have been an effective way to get them to back off. Damn speedsters, I cursed. Now that they were gone, I was wounded and fresh out of moves. Is that the guy they left behind? I heard a voice say. It was coming from a pair of mutants who floated down from the now-destroyed viewing box. The voice belonged to a young brown-haired teenager about Dante's age who wore a red visor. He doesn't look like much, he concluded, folding his arm. You barely know him, Scott, the girl beside him said. Let's hear him out at the very least. She had red flowing hair and a gorgeous face. Jean Grey, oddly tolerant considering what she must have witnessed in the stands. She had a good heart. As long as no one broke it, getting a chunk of the Phoenix Flame wouldn't be as hard. Hopefully. She had a complicated look on her face when we met eyes. I was meeting her a few years earlier than I wanted, and had to fast-track the first stage of my plan, earning her trust. In a colossal moment of restraint, I made Rebellion and Ebony vanish, leaving me unarmed. Before this all goes to shit, at least let's try to have a civil conversation, I said with a self-assured smile. Jean's POV. We've known about the underground fight club run by the Brotherhood for months. And after a week of making no progress, Professor Hank had a sudden breakthrough. On the day a fight was supposed to go down, an algorithm he set up sent camera footage of Toad entering a convenience store in a shady area of Las Vegas with a half a dozen henchmen and left alone. It took Professor Hank under a minute to hack into his phone and track Toad back to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Beast had us on the Blackbird the moment Scott and I were out of school. It was our first mission together since we became a couple, and I was afraid it would affect our team dynamic. He always put himself ahead of me on missions, even when letting me lead made more strategic sense. I read his thoughts on our latest training session in the danger room and saw the depth of his devotion. It terrified me. Scott was willing to die for me. When I told the professor about it, he simply smiled. It is a gift to feel so deeply and so passionately while still so young, Jean. I'm happy that he likes me so much, I muttered, looking down as my cheeks burned red. But I am not sure I want the weight of his death on my conscience. And it will not be, the professor assured. Scott is his own person and allowed to feel whatever he feels. Although he loves you, and that will influence him quite a bit, he'll likely lay down his life for any other student or member of the squad. He's selfless, and it's that very reason why I'm grooming him to take over when the older team retires. Professor, still, don't turn him away specifically because of what you've seen, he said with a warm smile. You're not supposed to be his mind in the first place, and that wouldn't be fair to Scott. You like him, and he loves you. That should be enough for now. Like him, I latched onto those words. Not love. Scrutinizing my thoughts, I realized the professor was right. I didn't love Scott, but I liked him enough not to ruin what we had because he loved me too much. Most girls would kill to date a boy like him. I saw my classmates' stares when he walked into the room, played sports, or sat at lunch. He was the hottest guy in school, and I was lucky to have him. Fast forward a few hours, and we sat at the rear of the plane side by side, Scott's hand wrapped around mine. I just intercepted the live broadcast, and I'm spoofing the server's signature, Professor Hank announced from one of the pilot's seats. As far as he knows, he's streaming live to 100,000 paying viewers. Excellent work as always, the professor praised from the seat across from us. He smiled at me, and I knew he saw through me. He didn't have to read my mind. You've done this hundreds of times in the danger room, Professor said. No need to be nervous, Jean. It's just last-minute jitters, Professor. Yeah, relax, babe. Scott bumped shoulders with mine. I'll laser off Toad's face before I let him touch you. Not that you need my protection. You can take out chumps like him in your sleep. I bit my lip. He was right, of course, but his comment about lasering Toad's face got me thinking about what the professor had told us earlier. Toad was not the only enemy we had to worry about on this mission. Scott saw the growing look of worry on my face, so I spoke before he asked. But what about the anomaly? While the professor was scanning ahead, he sensed somebody in the warehouse with Toad. Only his mind was unlike anything he'd ever encountered before. The professor had dubbed him the anomaly. He won't be a problem, the professor assured. I've personally scanned him, and while there's something underneath the surface I can't quite grasp, he poses very little danger to the combined forces of the X-Men. Logan, who'd been sitting still this entire time, spoke up. Don't get your little heart worked up about a pup. If the prof said it's fine, then it's fine. He unsheathed his adamantium claws, and it caught the blue light of the ship. And if it isn't, I've got my claws. Put that away before you cut something important, Storm chided. The sentiment is the same here, of course. Scott beamed. See, nothing to worry about. I let out a long sigh and forced a smile. I suppose you're right. I didn't think I would need to openly address this, but here we are. I've been getting a lot of criticism, and their complaints fall into one of two camps. 1. Dante is too weak. That was a deliberate choice on my part. I've always liked protagonists who've been forged in the fires of adversity and came out of battles stronger, smarter, and better. That's the kind of progression I wanted Dante to have. While yes, he starts off weak because this version of Dante is canonically the weakest, he arguably has the greatest potential because he's half demon and half angel. Think about all of the potential combinations, weapons, and abilities he could have. And don't get me started on the classes I have planned. 2. Dante goes from one bad situation to the next. Without major spoilers, this stops happening after this arc. The first arc was to set up how realistically bad and complicated things can get when you screw up in this universe. When old Dante kills somebody important and doesn't cover his tracks, S.H.I.E.L.D. starts looking for his ass. When our Dante tries to rob a gang house, he nearly dies because, shocker, charging into a drug den is a bad idea, even if you're superhuman and have mastery over multiple weapons. The current arc with the Mutant Brotherhood and the X-Men is set up for a slower-paced arc where Dante gets to breathe, strategize, and grow strong. In case you didn't notice the tag, it's a weak to strong story, so that means Dante won't realistically come out on top of every fight he's in. For example, the situation with Silver Surfer. He could not realistically win that fight, so he switched gears and tried to negotiate. That failed because Dante wasn't a talk-no jutsu master. The point I'm trying to make is that, while I admit my writing could improve, everything that has happened so far has happened for a reason. I don't think I have it in me to write a wish fulfillment book where the character faces no real challenge, because life is not really like that. Even the richest, most privileged people in the world go through shit, and it's important to reflect that in fiction. I know I might lose readers because some people can't stand to see the main characters lose, but I think that's better for the story in the long run. Regardless of whether you decide to stay or go, know that I really appreciate the support and attention up until now. A writer's biggest dream is to have fans who adore and love their work enough to keep reading. Jean POV. Professor Beast narrated the fight between the Anomaly and Night Cat over the comms as we approached the building like a sports commentator. He just summoned a gun and tried to shoot Night Cat in the face. Luckily, he somehow raised his forearm in time to receive the shot. Oh wow, Night Cat is attacking him with projectiles, and he seems he might not make it. Oh, scratch that. He just summoned the strangest longsword I've ever seen. And he seems to be fairly skilled at using it too. Nightcap might be in trouble. We need to change strategies. Team A, go to the arena and stop him. Team B will handle the viewing room. The professor is on standby to help both teams if things go too far. Scott and I approached the viewing room with him in the lead as always. Right as we were at the bottom of the stairs, Professor Beast screamed into our comms. The professor, he's down. The anomaly did something to him. We both froze. What? I panicked. How was that even possible? Professor was the strongest psychic on Earth. Or at least that was what I'd been led to believe. Was the anomaly some kind of sword-wielding psychic? Is he okay? Scott asked, visibly shaken, but his voice was still measured, sticking to his training under pressure. There was a bout of silence as we waited with bated breath. He will be, came the response. He has to be more powerful than we think if he can knock the professor out like that. He may be a psychic. I said. Unlikely, Beast responded. The professor would have known upon the first scan. He's something different entirely. It's up to Storm and Wolverine now. Both of you will have to deal with Toad and his partner. Do you think you can handle that? My heart skipped a beat. Partner. The professor never said anything about a second mutant. Professor X probably wanted to test how we'd perform going into a fight with next to no intel, Scott put together. He and I thought you were ready for more challenging combat scenarios. Your missions up until now have gone exactly as planned, Beast confirmed Scott's hypothesis. Do we know who's inside? I asked. The professor didn't tell even me, Beast said, but he did confirm that it was no one too dangerous. But they're definitely a member of the Brotherhood. So, do you think you can handle it? Or would you prefer I come down and give you a hand? My knee-jerk reaction would have been no, but the test was vital, even if the professor wasn't here. Still, I couldn't help but worry for Scott's safety. Before I could give my answer, Scott decided for the both of us. We got this, Doc, Scott announced, and I looked at him puzzled. I know we're worried, but it's just like the professor said. We've been preparing to fight schmucks like these for years. Follow my lead. In any other situation, I'd have found his confidence reassuring, irresistible even. But he'd walked all over me without realizing it. There was no putting the genie back in the bottle now, so I marched up the stairs behind him. He counted down from 3, and the door flew open with a telekinetic shove from me. Toad seemed to be in a heated argument with a mutant I instantly recognized. Quicksilver? Shit. The entire room exploded into motion. I raised a telekinetic block in front of Toad and Pietro Maximoff, drawing on the tactics I'd drilled for dealing with a speedster like him. Predictably, he pitched over, flipping wildly in the air before slamming into the wall beside me. Toad caught a concussive energy beam to the chest that surprisingly didn't put him out of commission. He vaulted onto the walls and tried to escape through the broken window in the viewing room. But I held him midair as Scott swung his beam around and hit with a second, more potent shot. He dropped to the ground. Every inch of me vibrated. This was nothing like the training room. It was so much more intense. Yet, it had gone unexpectedly well. Scott had the same look of panic on his face, but it slowly gave room for confidence. Well, that went better then. The next instant, Scott was flipping in the air and Toad was gone. Shit. Quicksilver woke up. I stretched my hand, catching Scott in a telekinetic grip. Jesus, he rubbed his chin. You can't take your eyes off them for a single second, can you? Sorry about that, I mumbled. I should have put him to sleep. Nah, it's fine, Gene, he said, standing up. Let's see this so-called anomaly for ourselves. The entire time we floated down, I couldn't help but feel guilty for how easily they'd managed to escape. I was so mad at Scott that I put our relationship before the mission. Scott had pissed me off, but I couldn't lose focus like that again, or the consequences would be dire. Dante/Axel POV. Oh, now you want to talk? Scott scoffed. After your pals have run off, and you're all alone. I eyed the teenager as he touched down with Jean, a vein throbbing on my forehead. Teen angst. I didn't miss that in the slightest. Scott, Storm chided. He's willing to talk. The very least we can do is hear him out. Even after what he did to the professor? I raised my hands in defense. Hey, he was the one wriggling his way inside my head. If you knew anything about me, you know that was a no-go territory. I was merely defending myself. And what about the people you killed, bub? Wolverine demanded in his intense, grisly voice. I put 2 and 2 together when I saw the comms on their ear. They probably had a hacker on their team looking into me. It was likely Professor Hank. Self-defense, I said easily. I was in town looking in on an old friend when a green bitch face showed up and tried to drag me into some underground fight club to pay off my friend's debt. Naturally, I refused, and his men attacked us after he left. Wanted my shiny pistols. Said they were too good for me. I wasn't about to let him have them. So a fight broke out. I defended myself, tried to leave town, and that asshole of a speedster wrecked my car and damn near killed me. Next thing I know, I'm facing a guy with a damn tail and claws. And your asses storm in here just as I was about to negotiate my freedom. I finished with an exasperated gasp and a shake of my head. The X-Men stared at me with a mix of shock and confusion. Did the audience just sit through my speech? I wondered out loud, finally remembering that an audience had been watching us this entire time. I'd like to think that I'm an entertainer, but I'd rather not expose myself any more than I already have. They were never here to begin with, Storm said. It's far too dangerous to have a live audience for a mutant fight club. All sorts of people can get in. Oh God, I let out a sigh that had been holding back. My new papers were still secure. I get it, I nodded, sighing in relief. Mutant hate groups, the military, and all manner of bad people could invade the audience and launch an attack. So the entire crowd was a smokescreen. And the stream, diverted by someone on our team. Toad never went live. Sweet Mary and Joseph. You have no idea how happy that makes me. I wouldn't rejoice just quite yet, Scott warned, his lips twisting in disgust. You're a killer. The police would like to talk with you. The news said you set fire to a store. The place was on fire when I left. I huffed, folding my arms. Donnie had a lot of electrical equipment at the back of his store, and he liked to drink. Is it all that surprising that a fire broke out during a shootout? You've got an answer to every question, don't ya? Wolverine asked, and I replied with a shrug. As a matter of fact, I do. And I can't let the police find me. Why? Because you have even more blood on your hands. Scott was quick to pile on. Yes, I thought but answered differently. Because they'll hand me over to S.H.I.E.L.D. or any number of extra-governmental bodies or factions in search of people with superhuman powers. I will be poked, prodded, or experimented on. Your type has been prosecuted. Are you okay with just handing me over? Because I don't fit into your convenient label. My words struck a chord in everyone except Scott. You see what he's doing? He's killed people. We can't trust him. And you and the rest of the X-Men haven't committed any crime in your little secret missions to save mutants? Aurora and Jean's eyes went a little bit wider, while Logan's only grew narrower. You're not nearly as good at covering your tracks as you think you are, I grinned. Y'all have been at this a while, and people pay attention. What happened to you? You can't be much older than I or Scott. Jean's voice was thick with emotion. She pitied me. I blinked. Her words caught me in the feels. A string of bad luck brought on a psychotic powerhouse and a bubble bath, I said with a dark chuckle, trying to lower the walls I'd put on since I arrived in the Marvel Universe. I'd been on 24/7 for days now. I was tired to my very soul and was seeing a window of opportunity rapidly opening. Look, all I ask is for a chance. I just woke up one day with the ability to suddenly summon weapons out of thin air and fight harder and faster than I could ever dream. My life since then has been one bloody mess up after the next. Jean threw a look at Logan and Aurora before finally settling on Scott, who threw his hands up. Oh, come on. He never had the same chance we did, Jean pleaded. All he's asking for is asking us for help. Are we really going to turn our backs on him? But he's a murderer. It was all self-defense. I said a bit too quickly. It was probably not the best time to bring up how my powers worked. I had a feeling that stealing souls wouldn't sit well with them. He's no mutant, Logan finally spoke. But you know how to scrap, and I will never fault a man for protecting himself. I nodded in appreciation, knowing the self-defense angle would appeal to, at least, Logan. A veteran of World War II, he knew a thing or two about taking a life. We'll take you to see the professor when he's awake. He'll decide what to do with you. The blood drained out of my face, and Scott laughed. Not the mind rapist. I looked at Aurora in hope, but she seemed to agree with Logan. We trust the professor's judgment. He can see through lies. If all you've said is true, I have no doubt he'll let you stay. I set my teeth and resisted the urge to show outward displeasure, but Scott caught it easy enough. Huh, thought you could fool us, he snickered. I'll be standing right next to you when he makes the call. Damn my life. I hate teenagers. For a moment, I considered making a desperate escape. But between Wolverine, Storm, Jean, and Scott, I didn't like my chances. Plus, I'll be risking what trust Jean had for me. I had to play the long game, so I put on a show. I summoned rebellion and clutched it in my hand with a fearless look in my eyes. You might as well kill me here because I'd rather die than end up as somebody's guinea pig, I growled. I dare you, Scott threatened. Move an inch and I'll laser what's left of that jacket off you. Scott, Jean yelled. You're only making it worse. Stand down, kid. Don't make me repeat myself. Or you'll what? Hand me over to that telepath and turn me into a vegetable? I think I'll take my chances. I assumed a fighting stance and Scott powered on his visor. Jean leapt in front of him. Get out of the way, Jean. I won't. Whatever happened to giving everybody a chance? He doesn't deserve one. He's playing us. Enough. Storm's voice rippled out. Then she turned to face me. If you want the chance you're so desperate for, come with us and be interrogated. That is the only way you're going to regain your freedom. I was hoping that I'd be Jean who'd be the tiebreaker, but Storm led the team, so I supposed it was more appropriate. But I couldn't give it away too easily. What makes you different from every other asshole who tried to kill or use me? If you know of us, then you must know what we stand for. Yeah, for mutants, that is. What about us regular weirdos? Storm sighed. This is clearly going nowhere. So how can we prove to you that no harm will befall you? I blinked, then smiled a little inside before pointing at Jean. She's the only one who spoke up for me. And since she's on this special team, she must be fairly powerful and important. If she promises you're for real, I'll come. Oh, come on. Scott let out a frustrated scream, clearly seeing through my bullshit. But it was effective nonetheless. I promise, Jean said almost immediately, and I nodded, reluctantly banishing rebellion. I'm in your hands now, princess. I flashed her a smile, and she blushed. My grin grew even wider, seeing the mounting frustration on Scott's face. Now that the drama is done with, we can finally leave, Logan said, sheathing back his claws. Aurora huffed beside him. Teenagers and their theatrics. The X-Men led me outside the warehouse to an empty patch of open desert. Are we going to teleport away, or? A giant stealth plane materialized before my very eyes. Damn me, I whispered. What? Haven't seen a stealth plane before. Scott quipped. As a matter of fact, no, I have not, I said deadpan. Where could I have possibly run into one? Scott blinked mutely, realizing I had a point, but powered on regardless. Whatever. Let's just go see the professor. The base of the jet eased open, lowering a ramp. A blue-skinned, shaggy-capped person stood at the very top with circle glasses of all things, and the same yellow and black leotard that I hoped I wouldn't have to wear one day. Is that a Wookiee? I asked slack-jawed. With the performance I was putting on, I was surprised I hadn't gotten an acting skill yet. What's a Wookiee? Jean asked beside me. It's a Star Wars thing. You won't get it, I muttered, still staring at the cat person. So, you the professor? What if I am? Beast asked, and I squinted. You're not him, I declared, earning looks from everybody present. No British accent. I clarified, stuck out, even as a voice in my head. Beast chuckled, shaking his head. Of all the ways. He'll get a laugh out of that when he wakes up. You're the tech guy, I take it, I said. I must admit, I pictured you way less thicker. The name is Hank, he said, gesturing to me aboard, and we mutants come in all shapes and sizes. Dante, I answered, fully knowing what revealing my actual name would mean. They'd be able to trace me back to LA, and probably connect me to the murders if they haven't already done that. At the very least, being honest would earn me brownie points and keep my new identity a secret. I didn't know how I was getting out of this yet, but I was holding back as many cards as I could. So, your mutant power is thinking super fast. Not quite, Hank explained. Mutations that present themselves in physical changes are often not as simple. I attained a different physiology when my mutation manifested. It has nothing to do with my intellect. Double trouble, I quipped as I walked into the jet. It was less spacious than I imagined for the infamous jet. A dozen or so seats were in the bay area leading up to a cockpit. A bald man in a wheelchair sat in a corner, with his hung low and straps holding him upright. The X-Men seemed to flock past me to attend to him. Professor, Jean softly said as she rushed to him, with Scott beside her. Wolverine and Aurora held back, but their concern was obvious, as were the sharp looks they gave me. Noting my discomfort, Beast spoke. He'll be fine. He's just unconscious. It has happened so few times that the young ones are convinced the professor is invincible, which begs the question, what exactly are you? Beast's scrutiny turned to me, as did everyone else's. What do you mean? You're not quite human. Of this, I am certain, by your admission and the professor's. He called you an anomaly. My eyes darted around the room as I searched for an explanation. I knew lying was out of the question. Between Jean's telepathy, Beast's, and Wolverine's senses, they'd likely pick me apart. Ah well, I've always been a little different since I was a kid, I said, drawing on Dante's memories. I was stronger and faster than just about everybody my age. Things changed in a big way for me about a week ago, though. I was contacted by something, and the encounter further awakened my abilities. I can heal now, and some strange energy seems to be bubbling inside me. I shrugged. As for why I figured out I was not a mutant, it was because I've been like this since I was little. Most mutants I know get their mutation when they're teenagers. Besides, I learned that people come for you when you awaken your mutant abilities. That never happened. Not until recently. Hank shifted his glasses, seemingly satisfied with my explanation for now. We'll arrive at the school soon enough. We'll talk further there. I nodded, finding a seat, and strapped down, waiting for takeoff. Everybody's mind seemed to be somewhere else except Scott and Jean, who seemed to regard me. The former with scorn and the latter with curiosity. Curiosity, I knew, which wouldn't be satiated by just staring at my face. She was a telepath. She probably couldn't help herself. My mind was likely the only source of entertainment on a weary, multi-hour-long flight to a boarding house. Once the old man came to, he would probably try to enter my mind again. I wasn't sure I could repeat the demonic energy explosion whenever I crossed paths with a telepath. I needed a Hail Mary, and I needed it now, so I turned to the one thing that could deliver it. Hey, I yelled out internally. System, you there? You see what's going on, right? I'm about to be found out. The whole mission is kaput if someone knows what I am up to. I could use some help here. No response came. I did not know whether the system was ignoring me or was not sentient, but I realized I would not be getting help from Shin after a few minutes of yelling at it. I supposed I couldn't really complain. The abilities I already had were overpowered. I just needed to think outside the box. Closing my eyes, I opened my status and took full stock. Name, Axel Warren Species, Nephilim Class, None HP, 290/420 Health Point SP, 220/370 Stamina Point AE, 50/230 Angelic Energy DE, 50/210 Demonic Energy Strength, 20+1 Dexterity, 21+1 Vitality, 41+1 Endurance, 36+1 Angelic Energy, 21+1 Demonic Energy, 20+1 Abilities Skills Parkour Basic, Blunt Weapon Mastery, Basic, Gun Mastery, Basic, Sword Mastery, Adept, Knives Mastery, Basic, Driving, Basic, Demonic Energy Manipulation, Basic, Shop, Locked, Devil Arms Souls, 42. The new stat growth was nice to see and hinted that pushing my body to the extreme and recovering through angel regeneration was the secret to sustained growth. However, what caught my attention was my new skill, Demonic Energy Manipulation. Between the night's craziness, I barely remembered getting the skill. The specifics of how I'd gotten it remained clear, however. In a moment of desperation, I'd pushed myself and manipulated my demonic energy. I was certain the same would be possible for angelic energy, even if I suspected it would be more difficult. Still, I needed to figure it out right here and right now because it might be too late by the time I arrived at the school. The answers I was looking for lay in some unique interaction with demonic and angelic energy. I was certain of it. I just had to figure it out before we reached New York. The regular flight time between New York and Las Vegas was 6 hours. A bullshit stealth jet could probably cut the travel time in half. I had that much time to cobble together a new skill. This was not how I imagined being Dante would be. With my eyes still shut, I took deep, long breaths as I searched for the weightless, ethereal energy I felt pulsing through me each time I used angel regeneration. In the game, angel energy was the more versatile and elusive of the pair. It had been shown to let you do everything from creating energy constructs to teleportation and rapid regeneration. I did not understand the first thing about it, but as Dante has proven throughout the games, you didn't need to understand something to wield it like a badass. Activating angel regeneration, I reached for the energy I'd grown passingly familiar with and let it pour over me. I got the measure of it and tugged at it as it rapidly mended my wounds. "Wow," Jean murmured, and I heard Logan shift before me. "What the hell are you doing?" Scott yelled, and I tuned him out, opting to ignore the arrogant prick. "Settle down," I heard Logan bark. "He's healing himself." I switched off the skill before it burned through all of my angel energy and felt my way back to the sensation I had experienced before in my mind's eye. I spent a great deal of time stumbling in the dark. Before I ever came close to feeling my angel energy, I gained a far more interesting skill. Congratulations. You've learned meditation, basic, calms the mind, body, and soul, allowing for introspection, mental decompression, and clarity. 2x energy regeneration, and temporarily boosts physical and mental control by 25%. Christ. Congratulations. You've learned meditation, basic, calms the mind, body, and soul, allowing for introspection, mental decompression, and clarity. 2x energy regeneration, and temporarily boosts physical and mental control by 25%. Christ. That was some skill. It seemed I'd finally hit the motherlode. I just assumed the skills I'd be limited to learning were the ones Dante knew. But meditation had been vital to my career in my old world. I practiced it daily after my morning sessions before I dealt with the bullshit of the day. It had saved my life back then, and it was doing it again. With the 25% boost, it wasn't long before I got a feel for angelic energy. It squirmed out of my grasp with each mental tug, but I more or less got a handle on it. Congratulations. You've learned angelic energy manipulation, basic. With 1 hour left on the clock, I faced the impossible task of cobbling together a mental protection technique with barely any understanding of either energy. I spent a few minutes playing with both energies. They were the opposite of each other. Demonic energy was violent and explosive, bombastic and overwhelming, while angelic energy was elusive and pure. I combed through my memories in meditation, searching for a single instance when I'd seen Dante or Virgil, for that matter, display any mental resistance skill. Surprisingly, I didn't find one. The closest thing to mental protection DMC Dante ever came close to was the mental bind or seal his father, Sparda, placed on his memories. In this universe, I had no such restriction, thanks to Shin, but that didn't mean the seals on Dante's memories did not exist. Dante had to break them to unlock his full memories, and that hadn't happened yet. Hoping for a link to some unexplained mystery realm was a long shot, but it was the only lead I had. The Devil Hunter had needed a broken picture frame and a rose to trigger his transportation in the game, but I hoped a confluence of angelic and demonic energy would be a suitable substitute. First, I tried manipulating a chunk of angel energy and sent it in the direction of my mind. The energy snaked and danced away from my grip, but flowed in the general direction I intended. For the longest time, nothing happened, and then I added demon energy. Everything turned white, and suddenly, I found myself standing in a floating ruined city, surrounded by boundless evening clouds. The air was thick with demonic energy, and the endless sea below crashed against the fractured remains of skyscrapers. Light filtered through the cloud from a sun I couldn't quite place in the sky. Chunks of the ruin were small distances from each other. They were far enough that I couldn't quite reach them with a jump. Or could I? I was strong enough to manhandle a fully grown man with one hand. It stood to reason that I could make the jump. I eyed the next platform over and breathed deeply. With a run and leap, I easily cleared the distance. It had been startlingly easy. Maybe it was time I stopped underestimating just how strong I was. With a shrug, I continued exploring, picking up speed and leaping my way across platforms. The world looked exactly like I'd seen in the game, DMC, but the layout was drastically different. There was an interconnected maze of platforms, floating ruins, and probably demons. How that was possible in a mental realm was beyond me. In the distance, I saw a giant bronze statue rising out of the ocean. It had an elaborate headdress of flowing metal, a gaunt body, and 2 ornamental female figures draped on its shoulders. 2 large chains hung from its neck, swinging so low they nearly touched the ocean before the ends climbed up to the ruins, vanishing behind obscure structures and stacked buildings. In the game, Dante platformed over to the base of 2 stones and took his demonic axe, Arbiter, to them. The stone base bore glowing red markings, and the seals hid some of the most traumatic memories of his life. Mundus ripped his mother's heart out of her chest in front of him. Sparda's spell made him forget, but some part of Dante never got over it. Speaking of which, I wondered if Mundus existed in this version of the Marvel Universe. I was even more concerned about exactly what I would remember when I broke both seals and dreaded the possibility that I would be unable to. Dante had Arbiter to break the stones. I didn't. Will I be stuck here for life? Letting out a long breath, I reminded myself that I knew nothing of this universe for certain. Get to the stone seal before you start freaking out. I gave myself that small allowance, but it wasn't long before I stumbled upon another problem. The distance between platforms was growing larger. It wouldn't be long before I wouldn't be able to make the jumps anymore. I needed to figure out the double jump. It was a skill Dante had mastered by the time you began the DMC game. It allowed you to create a platform of demonic energy in the air and use it as a springboard for a second jump. I just touched demonic energy for the first time and was nowhere ready to attempt such a complicated move, but I hardly had a choice in the matter. So I didn't let myself complain and got straight to strategizing. It was my ritual each time I picked up a new goal or challenge. First, I needed to measure how high I could jump and whether it was possible to pull off the technique instinctively. Then, I had to practice manipulating demonic energy. If I were lucky, creating platforms would be a relatively simple trick. Would it surprise you to learn that I was unsuccessful on both fronts? The leaps went well. So well, I broke the world record for the highest vertical jump, easily doubling it. No panel of invisible demon energy ejected from my body as I came down, however, no matter how hard I wanted it to. On the bright side, I found comfort in the fact that I was physically far ahead of most of the people that S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra could send after me. So I stood ahead if the professor tried to turn me over. My plans fell apart the moment I started demonic energy training. The energy was wild and bombastic. It didn't do neat little platforms you could double jump on. It rushed to my limbs at the slightest prompt, but getting it to do anything beyond that was an exercise in frustration. I finally managed to get the energy to erupt out of my finger after nearly an hour of practice. And it came out with such ferocity that it threw me off my feet and stole 50 energy points out of the already limited chunk I had. However, the entire experience gave me an idea of how to achieve a version of the double jump. 3 hours later, I assumed a runner's crouch, staring past the edge of the floating chunk of stone I was trapped on. Several hundred meters ahead of me, there was a bobbing wall turned sideways. I exploded into a sprint, pumping my legs past the limits of my dexterity stat, and leaped into the air just as I reached the threshold of my small island. Demonic energy flooded my leg muscles as I crossed the zenith of my jump and exploded from the soles of my feet just before I started to fall, launching me upwards and across. Congratulations, you've learned a demonic energy technique, burst. Minus 10D, congratulations. You've learned a demonic energy technique, burst. Minus 10D, a wide grin spread across my face as my boots scraped against the rough stone of the second platform. I let out a loud hoot and pumped my fist in the air. As exhilarating as that was, I'd not made the jump lightly. I had spent several hours trying to break out of the strange dimension before I decided to jump. I'd practiced ejecting demonic energy for hours, using it to do everything from augmenting my punch and kicks to boosting my vertical leaps and double jumping in the air. The daring jump I'd just completed had been what finally netted me the name technique, however. The journey to the seals after that was a cinch. While I hoped that I would leave this realm with a tool to keep Xavier out of my mind, I wasn't counting on it. For now, I settled for just getting out alive. Besides, I didn't know how much time would have passed when I returned. In the DMC game, no time passed when Dante returned to the real world. But this universe has shown me again and again that this wasn't a game. So, I didn't know what to expect. I cleared distances that should have been impossible for anybody else. And I constantly had to remind myself that I wasn't human, though I looked like it. Bludgeoning it with my meaty fists seemed like my option. It was crude, I know, but I didn't think rebellion would do any better. Trouble found me when I was a few platforms away from the stone seal. It was at the top of a set of dilapidated staircases, and it pulsed with bright crimson energy. A black rift opened in reality, and a writhing mass poured out of it. Startled, I took a few big steps backward and summoned rebellion. My heart raced as I watched the mass stretch and suddenly dig into the ground around, shattering stone. It spread itself around the chunks, stacking them on each other until they resembled something vaguely humanoid. It was hunched over, with one hand several times larger than the other and a head missing. It was, without a doubt, the most disturbing thing I'd ever seen. Just when I thought things could not get any worse, an eye opened up at the center of the mass, staring intently at me. What the hell? I took a step back. I recognized the eye, though I'd only seen it in passing. It was the eye of that outer eldritch thing. It had only seen me once in Shin's domain before I got sent here, yet it tracked me down across universes. A guttural, scraping voice emerged from the stone mass. Mine, it hissed as it swung its chunky hand forward. I ducked under the swipe and summoned one of the 2 grenades that I'd stolen from the men at Donnie's shop. I pulled the pin and slid it over, backpedaling rapidly. The explosion eviscerated my otherworldly visitor, along with half of the platform. A flood of energy filled me, threatening to throw me off my feet as a notification rolled in. You've killed a lesser eldritch concrete spawn, a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the many minds of Quellathrax, the insatiable. You've caught his eye, beware. You've earned 30 red orbs. Now you tell me. Once again, Shin's antics had messed me over, but I couldn't complain about the influx of red orbs. A few more concrete spawns, and I could buy Ophion. With the way things were going, I had a feeling I would need the grappling hook. The black portal in front of me pulsed again, and 2 masses poured out instead of 1 this time, and I moved immediately. I wasn't about to make the same mistake twice. I lobbed a grenade at the writhing pair as I turned tail and ran. A double jump carried to a stone platform behind just as the grenade went off. It kicked up a cloud of smoke as the island crumbled, and small chunks of it fell into the endless sea. You've earned 30 red orbs. I immediately activated my Devil Eye skill the second I saw the notification, and it saved my life. Lesser Eldritch Concrete Brute. I saw the name floating at the edge of the smoke cloud microseconds before a mass of stone and writhing black tentacles crashed onto the spot where I previously stood. A handy use of burst had carried me halfway across the platform. The ground shook beneath my feet, sending vibrations through every inch of me. The single eye stared at me, its proportions largely identical to his predecessor. He was 10 feet tall with a heavy top and tiny legs. Several tentacles danced behind its back, but most mass concentrated on its chunky forearms that ended in fists as thick as trees. The blow came faster than I could blink, dyeing my white hair red as it grazed my scalp. Its boulder-like fist had been launched and was still connected to its unnatural body by pulsing black tendrils that yanked it back moments after I ducked underneath its fist. I rolled out of the way, coming up with a 12-gauge shotgun that I unloaded into its chest. I pumped the action and fired again and again, sending it stumbling back 1 step. The brute's fist swung out, landing slightly to my right as I summoned Rebellion and swung at the black tendrils connecting the fist to the rest of the body. My blade made it halfway through before it was clashed against a bit of stone. I had to unsummon my weapon and scramble to the side to dodge the second fist. I couldn't use Rebellion unless it were a clean cut, so I switched tactics. I hitched back a ride to its body on its returning limb and gave it a taste of its own medicine with a demonic, energy-infused fist. The first burst had it tipping over, but the second one put it flat on its ass. I raised my energy-clad fist, aiming for its big eye when its black tendrils surged. I immediately leaped back, but a soul tendril snagged my right leg, pulling me in. More tendrils struck out and I twisted, summoning Rebellion. Since it was made from eldritch gunk, Rebellion chopped the tendril wrapped around my leg and parried the others. I landed on my feet, smiling. A preemptive use of burst positioned me across a mess of attacking tentacles, and another one allowed me to cut most of them. The brute roared in pain. A third burst sent me straight into its soul eye, sword first. Rebellion sunk to the hilt, and I abandoned it immediately when I felt the brute shift. I backpedaled with a burst, but I was not nearly fast enough. I was in the air before I realized it, hands windmilling, with most of my side crushed. Minus 250 HP, I was above the platforms now, but I knew I only had seconds before I went over the edge and fell to my death. With a mental command, I unsummoned and resummoned Rebellion and yelled status. I toggled to the Devil Arm section and immediately purchased Ophion. Rebellion warped before my very eyes. Its blade transformed into a long interlinking metal spine with a rusty claw at the end of it. It snapped open and shut as it pulsed with demonic energy. I immediately recognized it as the demon pull ability of Ophion. I needed the angel lift ability, so I switched energy and the change was immediate. The head transformed into a serpent-like monster with long, vicious canines pulsing with blue energy. I aimed Ophion at one of the floating chunks above us and fired. It snagged the chunk of rubble just as my body fell past my platform. With a mental tug, I commanded Ophion to shorten, slingshotting me over the edge and flipping back onto the brute's platform. Unsurprisingly, the bastard was still alive. But now that had taken out its eye, it was flailing and helpless. Good. I switched energies and flung out Ophion, grabbing hold of one of the brute's legs, and I yanked, tripping it over. I moved to its flank and watched as it tried to stumble its way back to its feet. But I grabbed hold of its hand and pulled again, bringing it that much closer to the edge. I repeated the trick 2 more times before it finally caught on and grabbed Ophion's chain. But by then, it was too late. It was at the very edge, and I'd switched energies. I pulled myself to it and desummoned rebellion at the very last moment, slamming into the brute with a burst strike to the chest. It fell right over the edge, and I nearly joined it, with half of my body dangling. It took more effort than I expected to pull myself back onto the platform. I was panting when the notification popped in. You've earned 60 red orbs. Jesus, that was the equivalent of offing 15 humans. Taking him down felt like it too. I burned angel regeneration, rapidly restoring my health. The latest notification brought my red orb count to 62. Under normal circumstances, that would have made me excited, but then I looked at the dark portal. A familiar single eye was staring out of it now, regarding me with naked hunger. Strangely, all I felt was white-hot anger. What the hell are you staring at, you peeper? Tasty morsel. All roads lead to Quellatrax. Quellatrax's voice boomed in my mind, its voice a chorus of distorted whispers. His enormous mind briefly touching mine was enough to send me stumbling to my knees with my nose bleeding. Something good did come out of nearly getting my mind melted. Congratulations. For bearing the weight of an infinitesimally small portion of Quellatrax's, you've learned mental resistance. Adept. Congratulations. You've received your first quest from your god and patron, Shin the Avaricious. A lesser fragment of Quellatrax has followed you here from the void between realities for what was denied him. Your essence. Beat back 5 incursions of the insatiable eldritch. 1 of 5 time till next incursion, 1 month. Rewards. 1 class token from the Shin's multiverse famous shop. For completing one of many trials, you've been rewarded one of the 2 keys needed to access Shin's store. Note from Shin. Wow, that was intense. I mean, unlocking Ophion just as you fell over the edge, only to come back and kick Stone Golem's ass? Main continuity Dante would be proud. In case you were wondering, yes, I let him follow you. No, this will not be the last time I put your life in danger for my amusement. And if we're being honest, you know as well as I do that you needed the red orbs. Besides, Quell is a bastard, and he could use some humbling. Anyway, ciao, and happy hunting. I was too tired to let myself stew in rage at Shin's antics, so I focused on the portal. It was finally closing. The dark portal shrunk until it was a dot in reality and vanished. A few angel lifts and demon pulls later, I found myself at the base of the stone seal. Standing there, I was starting to second-guess my choice of Ophion over Arbiter. But then I reminded myself that Arbiter was twice the cost of Ophion, and choosing it would have probably gotten me killed in the fight against the brute. It took over 20 demonic energy burst strikes, and my hands were raw at the end, but the stone seal finally shattered, and the chain fell into the endless sea. The bronze statue in the distance turned its head in my direction, and suddenly, I found myself back in Blackbird like I never left, a layer of sweat covering my brow. Congratulations. You've unlocked the epic skill. Paradise Simulacrum Basic. Visit a mental plane fashioned by the legendary Sparda for limited periods during which no time passes in the physical world. You can bring people in and out of your mental slice of limbo at will. Available once a week for 12 hours. Damn me. That was intense, I gasped. Shin's antics pissed me off, but I had nothing to do with that anger for now. He was multiversal level. Unless I somehow found a way to match that power, I knew I'd be under his thumb for a while. Since I arrived in this world, it had been one ordeal after the other. At first, I thought I'd been incredibly unlucky, but I was starting to suspect that Shin had a hand in it. He'd let an eldritch outer god follow me for the heck of it. Who was to say reality manipulation was beyond him. Everything I'd gone through could have been a plot to bring me closer to Jean years before I intended to make contact. I was certain he still wanted me alive, at the very least. However, my stay in the Marvel Universe would be one big fighting game if Shin had a say in the matter. Too bad I wouldn't be letting him have his way. If there was something Dante and I had in common, was that we didn't take shit from anybody. Are you okay? Jean turned to me, a mix of concern and surprise in her eyes. I'd gone from an open, albeit dangerous, book to completely shut in the span of a second. Not to mention that my stats had also gone up by a few points. Name, Axel Warren, Dante Sparda, species, Nephilim class, none HP, 120/440, health point SP, 220 to 400 stamina point AE, 50/240 angelic energy DE, 20/240 demonic energy strength, 21+3 dexterity, 22+3 vitality, 42+2 endurance, 37+3 angelic energy, 22+2 demonic energy, 21+3 abilities skills shop, locked. One of 2 keys devil arms souls, 62. Even Wolverine seemed to notice the change as he sniffed the air and looked in my direction. You're different, he announced. What did you do? People underestimate the benefits of meditation. I shrugged, a bit more confident in my seat. I didn't think I could beat Logan and Aurora because I now had Ophion and could throw a superpowered punch. But I had a new skill that ensured Jean or Xavier wouldn't be getting into my head without a fight. I wasn't exactly sitting pretty, but I was getting closer. Scott brought his hand to the side of his visor. What's going on, Jean? His mind, Jean said. It's walled off. Take your hands off that visor, Scott. Storm ordered before she looked in my direction. Walled off? How is that possible? Didn't Hank say he wasn't a telepath? He did, Jean confessed, looking genuinely bewildered. But I can't read his mind. And that's the way I want it. I folded my hands and narrowed my eyes. You and the professor have no business in there in the first place. He's obviously trying to hide something, Scott declared, throwing me what I assumed was a dirty stare. I could only see half of his face. The professor needs to scan him, and all of a sudden he's protected? That comment got everybody looking at me suspiciously. I snorted. So, I am the bad guy because I don't want to get skull smashed by some bald guy? I got some surprised looks for my colorful language. I've experienced enough of that for one lifetime and will not be letting anyone inside my head, no matter how nice their students promise that they are. Strap me up to a polygraph or send me away. It ain't happening. Despite my warning, Jean was the first to speak. The professor is not like that. Not gonna happen. She pursed her lips and frowned, clearly upset. Surprisingly, it was Beast that came to my rescue. Telepathy is not the only way we can determine your honesty. Body language, voice inflection, and years of experience have turned Charles into a human lie detector. If you're uncomfortable with telepathy, we don't plan to force you. Though I'd point out that assenting to it would certainly help your case. I'll take that under advisement, I said. Everybody mostly stayed quiet until we reached the hidden hangar of the Blackbird jet. I tried to play it cool when I saw the basketball court open up, but I found myself peering out of the window. I've seen it hundreds of times, and I still haven't gotten over it, Storm said, and I smiled. I don't think you can get over a hidden launch pad underneath a basketball court, of all things. If you're already drooling, then your mind will explode when you see the danger room, Scott scoffed. Oh yeah, I asked. What's so special about it? I, of course, knew what the danger room was, at least topically. The particulars were still a mystery to me. I was not much of a science guy, but the thought of hard light constructs got my juices flowing. It's the best training facility in the world, Scott declared, confidently folding his arms. It simulates complex scenarios, enemies, and terrains. Professor Hank can even program in enemies, so we're never entering a situation completely flat-footed. It's why we're the best team in the world. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Wow, I muttered, genuinely impressed by the danger room, but the phrasing ensured Scott and a few other X-Men thought I was impressed by them. So you can create hard light avatars of every bad guy the X-Men have ever fought. I turned to Beast, who was carefully landing the plane. More or less, Professor Hank answered. Although we'd need exhaustive data on the target before we can create a combat clone. What sort of data? The furry man blinked at me as he got up from his seat and looked down at his tablet. We'd need accurate dimensions, abilities, biological information, and estimated physical parameters. Did you have someone in mind? A few, I smiled. I'd like to take this danger room of yours for a spin and see the rest of your facilities. It'll be a great change of pace from what I'm used to. That's assuming the professor doesn't hand you over to the police immediately, Scott scoffed. And if you can't tell, you didn't make a great first impression. Like the nice lady said earlier, why don't you leave the judgment up to the professor? I snipped. Dr. Hank shifted gears the moment we left the Blackbird, muttering something about upgrading the fuel injection system and the stealth capabilities, while Logan took it upon himself to wheel the professor to his room personally. There was a moment on the ramp when my eyes met Logan's. Chills ran down my spine. He didn't seem like the type to hold grudges, but he genuinely cared for the professor, and I had put him in a wheelchair. Not that he wasn't already in one, to begin with, I thought in amusement. Gene, Scott, take him to one of the guest rooms so that he can get a change of clothes while we wait for the professor to wake, Storm ordered as she stepped off the jet. We're just letting him roam free, Scott demanded. Are we forgetting that he nearly killed that cat guy and murdered a bunch of people literally hours ago? Then, it's a good thing I'm sending you to keep him company, she said. Surely, you're not saying the greatest team in the world cannot handle some delinquent. Hey, I half-heartedly protested, watching as angst practically gushed out of Scott. He balled his fist and set his jaw before glaring at me and stomping off. Come on, Gene. Let's get this over with. I'm counting down the seconds until the professor wakes up. I followed behind Jean as she led me out of the high-tech hangar and deeper into the bowels of the X-mansion. How can you stand that guy? I asked Jean, who'd been quiet this entire time. He's just a bit wary of outsiders and people with complicated pasts. You mean murderers? I stated flatly. She seemed unbalanced by my candor, and I pressed on. I might be sitting for a polygraph, so I might as well tell you. I've killed before, but it's mostly demons, murderous drug dealers, and abusive assholes who deserve it. Why are you telling me all this? Jean asked with a bit of apprehension in her voice. I could tell the professor. It's all going to come out when they look into my past anyway, I shrugged. You stuck up for me when you didn't have to. I owe you the truth, at least. That makes sense, she muttered. But still, demons? You don't think I'm telling the truth? The look on her face spoke volumes. They've been after me since I was a kid, I said, casually stuffing my hands into my pocket. I didn't even have to spin a wild tale. I just drew from Dante's memories. Demons did exist in this world, and oddly, some of them resembled the same ones you fought in the DMC games, but others were Marvel originals. Luckily, only the demons from the DMC game have come after Dante. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been alive when Shin gave me his body. I've killed so many of them, I lost count. Things only started to change for me last week when my other powers manifested. I said, when you grow up being hunted, morality takes a back seat to survival. I'm sorry, Jean said softly, and I shrugged. It's not your fault. Jean took a moment to gather her thoughts. Why do you think they're after you? I think it's because of who my parents were, I said. Don't tell anybody this, but I think I'm not exactly an ordinary human. Maybe I'm part demon or something. I shrugged and looked at Jean. I suppose you can relate to that. You're not an ordinary mutant either. There was a flash of fear and confusion in her eyes. She was obviously curious about my parentage, but was more bothered about my comment. What do you mean? Don't tell me you don't know? I raised a brow. You're the strongest mutant I've ever seen, and I've met a lot of mutants. She frowned. I'm only a telekinetic with some telepathy. The professor is far stronger than I am. No, he's not, I said. My devil's eye does not lie. It tells me important things about each person I use them on. And it's telling me you're the most powerful mutant alive. If you're weaker than you should be, it's because somebody is keeping you that way. Devil eye? Jean asked skeptically. I thought you said you could only heal and summon weapons. A lot can change in one meditation session, I shrugged. I couldn't block telepathy before. Well, now I can. Like I said, I unlocked my powers a few weeks ago. I have no idea what my limits are. Jean still seemed a bit skeptical, so I shrugged. If I were in her shoes, I wouldn't believe an admitted murderer either. Just ask yourself this before you dismiss my claims entirely. What do I stand to gain from lying to you? I questioned. I just met you. Jean bit her lip in thought before she spoke. Prove that this devil's eye of yours actually exists. Tell me something else about myself. I laughed and actually used the skill. Jean took a step back, and I saw a notification floating above Jean's head. Jean Elaine Gray, avatar of the Phoenix Force, everything after that was a wall of question marks. Still, it gave me enough information to mess with Jean. Your middle name is Elaine, I said with a mischievous grin. Jean's eyes went wide. How did you? That's freaky. Your eyes turned red for a moment there. Oh, I didn't know that happened when I used Devil's Eye. Good to know. So you believe me now? Yes, she said with some hesitation. Still, I have a hard time wrapping my head around it. How is any of this possible? The better question should be, who is powerful enough to shackle a god? Jean broke her stride when I posed that question. I hoped she'd make the connection to Charles by herself, but if she didn't, she'd not be completely blindsided when she learned the truth. And when that happened, I'd be here to pick up the pieces and earn the Phoenix's favor. Whether or not it would like me enough to grant me some of its flame was another matter entirely. The talk with Charles could go either way, so I was poisoning the well as insurance. That wasn't to say that I had no strategies to convince the old coot to let me stay. I had stacks upon stacks of information I could use to strong-arm myself a permanent residence here. But staying at the mansion long-term would limit my growth. Instead, I was planning to stay long enough to win her over completely and get S.H.I.E.L.D. off my ass. Come on, Jean. I bumped her with my elbow. Let's get moving before your boyfriend blows a gasket. Jean blinked out of her reverie and blushed furiously. Did your Devil's Eye tell you? I'm not blind, you know? I chuckled as we walked deeper into the mansion. Scott came to get me at the crack of dawn and led me to the professor's office. It was a spacious study with a mahogany table, large windows that let in natural light, and low shelves stuffed with ancient leather-bound books. Take a seat, Dante, the professor offered. He was a bald man in his 40s with a smooth-shaven face and an elegant British voice. Don't mind if I do, I said, settling on the plush chair across from him. You know why I called you here, he said. The staff are undecided whether we should keep or hand you over to the authorities. They've asked me to make the final decision. And which direction are you leaning? I asked, crossing my legs. I barely know you, Charles said. We've only just met. That's not entirely true, I said with a cunning smile. You were in my head earlier, remember? Logan and Professor Hank tell me you react rather explosively to any mental intrusion of any sort, Charles said with a measured tone. I apologize for my actions earlier, but it was the only way to stop you from killing that man. I didn't actually plan on killing Night Cat, I said. I thought I was being recorded at the time and wasn't going to put an even bigger target on my back by killing a member of the Brotherhood. You intended to use him as leverage, Charles surmised. A plan which your X-Men ruined, by the way, I huffed. Given your history, you'd forgive me for not believing you. When we ran into you yesterday, we only knew about the murders and the fire at the store. But now, we know of your crimes and reputation in Los Angeles. You're not exactly the misunderstood teenager you pretend to be. No, I am not, I admitted. If you know about the crimes I've committed, you probably also know about my childhood. Yes, hunted by demons and moved from foster home to foster home, Charles said with a voice thick with sarcasm. Imaginary monsters are hardly justification for committing murder. Oh, there's nothing imaginary about them, I said, flashing my devil's eye, causing Charles to shift uncomfortably in his seat. I've devoted my entire life to fighting them and men whose souls are just as black as the demons themselves. You're a demon? Charles questioned, instantly making the connection. Revealing my heritage was a calculated risk, but knowing Xavier, he wouldn't be able to help himself. He probably already concluded I was dangerous and too powerful not to be controlled or limited in some way. And that was exactly what I wanted him to think. You'll have to ask my parents that, I said with a shrug. Given the unusual nature of your power, I'd argue that you were. It would explain why your mind felt unlike anything I've ever witnessed. That energy you used, it was unnatural. Story of my life. Been called that since I was a toddler. Xavier winced, but he did not back down. Still, your past does not excuse your actions. You hold little regard for life because of how you were raised. And I cannot be certain that you'd never bring harm to others if I let you go. You're right, of course, I said easily. But you could say the same thing about Wolverine. The professor's eyes went wide, speechless as I threw his hypocrisy back at him. How did you? Like I told the X-Men, you don't cover your tracks as well as you think, I said with an enigmatic smile. Look me in the eyes and tell me your X-Men have not and will not kill. The professor was quiet for a moment. Those who have are different people now. Whereas you were in a firefight only yesterday. A firefight that I was dragged into against my wishes, I said. As I explained, I was visiting a friend when your enemies showed up, and who says I was not trying to change. I just got dealt a bad hand after bad hand. From the SHIELD agent to the Santos crew waiting to ambush me. Every life I took was in self-defense. Xavier turned pale. Wait, did you say a SHIELD agent tried to kill you? You didn't tell Logan or Storm that. I smirked internally. Hook, line, and sinker. If SHIELD was active in this world, there was no way Xavier didn't know about them and what it's supposed to represent. It would go against everything Professor X stood for him to tolerate SHIELD abducting people. Wolverine had claws pointed at me, and I was trying to de-escalate the situation. I didn't think there was any room for story time. Professor X frowned. Tell me what happened. I retold the details of the night before I took over Dante's body, really emphasizing how suspicious the guy had been. He hadn't introduced himself, offered any explanation or anything. He just tried to jump me, and I'd fought him off. It was only after he was dead that Dante found out that he was a SHIELD agent. Noting the complicated look on Xavier's face, I decided to twist the knife even deeper. SHIELD is not supposed to go around abducting people. Are they? No, they're not. I guessed as much. That's why I ran, I said. I figured turning myself in was not an option. So, I stormed the Santos place, looking to get back some money their boss stole from me. After I left there, I went to an old pawn shop to try and retrieve my old guns. You already know how both interactions went. They fired first on both occasions, and things devolved. Xavier massaged his nose bridge. Your circumstances are extraordinary, he admitted. But if you found yourself on SHIELD's radar, there's very little I can do to protect you. I'm not asking for your protection, I said, earning a curious look from Xavier. I'm asking you to use your influence to help me negotiate a meeting with somebody high enough to trust. I can negotiate with him in good faith and find a mutually happy compromise. The old man stared at me. I couldn't tell if he was more impressed or shocked. He could read in between the lines. I was offering my services to SHIELD as a contractor, and he was not in any position to refuse me. Fury would want to talk to me, given the implications of what I'd just described, and Charles could not keep me from him without endangering the lives of his students. Releasing me to fend for myself didn't seem like an option he wanted to entertain either. Of course, I didn't want to go from a rookie devil hunter to a SHIELD mercenary without any time to prepare myself. Could you buy me at least a month to train before you set up the meet? I asked. I'd like to prepare myself physically. I knew that 1,001 things could go wrong during my negotiations with SHIELD, but I had a plan that guaranteed I walked out on top. Xavier didn't need to know that, though. It was a long moment before the professor spoke. Of course, Xavier's POV. What did you think of young Dante? I asked Storm, who sat in the same chair Dante had a few hours ago. When he was dismissed, he'd asked to be pointed to the training area and ran off. Hank had shown me the video of his fight. He was quite the competent fighter, on par with some of the most accomplished martial artists I'd ever seen. But his demonic heritage and powers set me on edge. After a single meeting, he'd been able to counter my mutant ability crudely. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing, Storm concluded. Manipulative, powerful, and has the intelligence to back it up. I'm almost afraid of what SHIELD could do with somebody of his talent. Played you like a fiddle, Wolverine grunted in his seat across from Storm. But he's owning up to his mistake. It's a shame to see a fighter of his caliber go. I rewatched his fight with Nightcat. He was lethal. That he was, I said, and I'm afraid SHIELD will warp him into more of a monster than he already is. Given his parentage, I fear that might be an inevitability. You can't keep him, Logan said. You know how Fury gets. We can't, I admitted. By announcing his connection with SHIELD, Dante had ensured we only had two options: turn him to the police where the Brotherhood and the corrupt members of SHIELD could find him, or help him on his terms. But I had a third and unconventional option. Logan, you're going to recruit Dante as your teaching assistant during his stay with us, and I'm going to be buying him 2 months instead of 1. He has considerable fighting experience. Use it to train the children. Are you sure? Storm questioned. He doesn't seem to respond well to threats of any kind. Storm was, of course, referring to the startling trail of bodies he'd left behind when he made his daring escape out of Los Angeles. He may be violent, but he's not quick to anger. Otherwise, he would have killed Kat and fought you when you tried to bring him in. He can be reasoned with. Logan seemed to be indifferent about the entire ordeal. The kids could use a sparring partner close to their level. What is the point of forcing him to teach? Storm asked. To keep the humanity in him alive, I answered. I also wanted to find a way to seal the demon in him away. Dante was like Jean in a way, flowing with untapped potential. I couldn't very well allow that type of violent power to grow unchecked. It could mean the end of us all. You can't be serious, I said to Logan, who was standing at my door with his arms folded. Afraid I am. The prof saw you fight and thought you could earn our hospitality by putting your talents to use. Damn, Charles. I couldn't believe this bullshit. I had plans to squeeze out as much training as my body could tolerate in the month I was here. But the crafty old man had other plans. And if I say no, will you ask me to leave? I narrowed my eyes. Nah, but seeing as I'm the combat instructor, I can cut you off from using the facilities. Logan shrugged. Hank tells me you've been looking forward to the danger room. Huh, go figure. I'd assumed Logan would have challenged me to a fight to settle our difference. I hadn't seen outright manipulation coming. It just goes to show that you can never judge a book by its cover. I'll do it, but I want full access to all of the facilities in return and personal instruction from you, I said, earning a raised brow from the bulky man. Why me? I know a seasoned fighter when I see one, and with those claws of yours, something tells me you're a master of hand-to-hand combat. True on both counts, Wolverine smiled. But what makes you think I'll agree to train some random pup? I grinned. You know I'm not some two-bit fighter. Otherwise, you wouldn't have let the professor talk you into letting me teach the students. Logan grunted. Be at the gym by noon. With those words, he turned around. Wait, I called out. Never got your name. In between the craziness of the night before, I realized I didn't ask for the X-Men's names. It'd be very bad if I slipped up. Logan, he answered and continued on his way. 10 minutes later, I was out of my room and scouring the mansion for the gym. It was just after 7 a.m., and most of the kids were either still asleep or stuck in the room getting ready, so I had a hard time finding somebody to give me directions. Thankfully, I stumbled upon a young blonde girl, who couldn't have been older than 10, strolling with a bunny plushie in her arms. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw me. You're new. Yup, just got here. I smiled down at her. Came in with the white-haired lady and the bulky guy. Oh, Uncle Logan and Auntie Aurora, she said, then looked up at me. You're Dante, the scary new student that everyone has been talking about. Talking about? I frowned. That was fast. She laughed. The kids don't stop talking just because it's light out. And what do they say? I asked, but I already had an idea. She seemed a bit nervous when she spoke, but I saw no fear in her eyes. They say you kill people, that you're a monster. I take it Scott is them. He doesn't like you very much, she laughed. It was all he could talk about at dinner last night. I huffed. Goddamned asshole. The feeling is mutual. I took a moment to consider the girl. Know where the gym is? I'd like to get an early start. She nodded vigorously and offered me her bunny's hand. Bunny and I will take you. A bunny named Bunny. My heart melted. She took me down winding corridors and turns. We came across a student or two, but they all seemed to give me a wide berth, probably because of what Scott had said. I didn't care either way. We mostly walked in silence until we arrived at a large set of doors. Thanks for the help, I said, kneeling to reach her level. I owe you one. She raised her bunny, pointing it at my face. You should thank Mr. Bunny. He did most of the work. I chuckled and shook the hand of the pink bunny rabbit. Thank you, Mr. Bunny, and thank you, I said, looking expectantly. Ileana, she supplied. Well, shit. I recognized the name immediately. She was Ileana Rasputin, a future sorceress, queen of limbo, and a new mutant. Now I know what you're thinking. Are Mai and her limbo the same? In this iteration of the Marvel Universe, possibly. Only time will tell. After I said goodbye to Ileana, I stepped into the X-Men gym, and my jaw dropped. It was state-of-the-art with weightlifting machines, free weights, a hydraulic weight station, a massive sparring area with heavy bags, and a small arena at the center. At the very edge of the room was a door that I assumed led to the danger room. I wasn't quite ready to take a peek behind it yet, so I started with a few laps around the sparring area, moved to stretches, and ended up at the heavy bag with a shit-eating grin. I began to absolutely unload into it. I started drilling elbow strikes and blocks, jabs, hooks, uppercuts, kicks, knees, and every other martial arts strike I could remember. After that, I moved on to footwork, quickly repositioning myself as I threw attack after attack at the heavy bag. Time flew by as I shifted to martial arts again, moving into kicks I'd learned from capoeira and karate. Each movement brought back an old memory of combat or training. I even moved into more practical styles that focused on joint manipulation. I came out of my reverie with a new notification flashing before my eyes. Congratulations, you've unlocked your first skill combination. Our Myriad Martial Art Mastery. Adept combines the knowledge and techniques from the martial arts you've mastered in your past life and distills them into a flexible, powerful, and unpredictable style. My body was soaked in sweat, and my heart was beating like a drum. But I felt truly at peace for the first time since I came to this universe. I took a gander at my skill list and nodded in appreciation. Parkour Basic, Blunt Weapon Mastery, Basic, Gun Mastery, Basic, Sword Mastery, Adept, Knife Mastery, Basic, Driving, Basic, Demonic Energy Manipulation, Basic, Burst, Basic, Angelic Energy Manipulation, Basic, Meditation, Basic, Paradise Simulacrum, Basic. R. Myriad Martial Art Mastery, Adept. I closed my status and moved on to the free weights. Given everything I'd managed up until now, I expected to be twice as strong as an experienced bodybuilder. I knew the weight of my strikes from my previous life, and I was outputting twice the force easily. When I completed my first set with the bench press, I knew my calculations were right on the money. I kept stacking weights until I peaked at 700 pounds. My squats were monstrous in comparison. I was pumping out reps with 1,200 pounds on the bar. My 100-meter sprint shattered Usain Bolt's record easily, having his time by 4.2 seconds. By the time I summoned Rebellion to go through the swordsmanship drills I'd inherited from Dante, I heard the gym door open, and Logan walked in. I was shirtless and covered in sweat, panting. "What are you doing just standing there?" he demanded. "Class starts in 20 minutes. After a quick shower and a change of clothes, I stood beside Logan as the students milled in. I recognized a few future X-Men: Kitty Pryde, Cyclops, Colossus, Bobby Drake, and his future nemesis Pyro. There were dozens of other mutants I didn't quite place, but they all seemed to recognize me. Murmurs and whispers pulsed through the crowd. "Killer. What was the professor thinking? He's kinda hot." Scott was the first to speak directly. "What's he doing here, Logan?" "That professor to you," he grunted at Scott. "And he's here to be your combat dummy and my teaching assistant." "Teaching assistant?" Scott scoffed. He got his ass handed to him by Toad. "Are you sure he can actually fight?" he said, looking down his nose at me. "Why don't you step into the arena and find out?" I said. "Ooh, fight, fight," Kitty Pryde chanted. She looked barely into her teens, but I could instantly tell she was a troublemaker. "Come on, Scott," Jean spoke up. "Walk away. You don't need to prove anything." "Can't back down now, Scotty boy," Pyro quipped. "Not after all that shit talk yesterday." "I don't intend to," Scott said, taking a bold step forward. I smirked. I almost pitied the kid. Colossus spoke up, his voice like gravel on asphalt. "Professor, aren't you going to stop this?" Logan shrugged. "Nah, it's perfect. It will show you the difference between sports combat and a seasoned fighter. In fact, I want the rest of you to take a run at him when Scott is done." "You really think he's going to lose?" Bobby Drake questioned. "Isn't he the best hand-to-hand fighter in the class?" "That doesn't mean shit in the real world," Logan grunted. "You're about to find out why." I stepped onto the sparring arena with a contented smile on my face. "I can't say I'm not looking forward to kicking your ass. Don't worry, though. I'll make it quick for Jean's sake." "Keep her name out of your mouth," Scott snapped as he assumed a traditional boxer stance. I copied him, but mine came out looser and more relaxed. We circled each other for a few seconds before Scott snapped his fist at me in a probing jab. It proved to be undoing. My leg whipped into his side, knocking the air out of him, and I put him on his ass with a neck kick. His visor was knocked straight off, and he spent the next few seconds writhing in pain. There was pin-drop silence in the arena as everybody stared at me. I winked at Jean, who seemed positively petrified, rushing to Scott's side. "Chump," I sniffed as Cyclops. "Teach you to talk shit behind people's backs." "So who's next?" I said, turning to the crowd of kids.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.